everyone! Today we are covering the manhwa, The Villainess Reverses the Hourglass. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you like this video, and tell us what you think. It helps us a lot. Okay, here we go! The manhwa starts with a small girl, alone and afraid in the dark. Her name is Aria. She's very poor, but her luck is about to change due to her mother's remarriage. The remarriage was a financial success, with the girl growing up in riches. She was beautiful, but she was spoiled, and soon she ended up being the most evil woman in the world. Her luck has a quick turn because soon the villainess meets a saint, who sets her up in the court and makes her so unpopular that eventually the evil woman is killed. Right at the end of her life, she wishes that she could go back in time and change her ways to save herself from her fate. Suddenly, a miracle happens. She is whisked away back in time to her childhood, and the hourglass has made new encounters for her as she makes her way to rewrite her fate. A maid has just dropped a glass, and the glass has cut Aria's leg. Everyone is frightened of Aria and her temper, but she forgives the maid to the surprise of everyone in the room. Aria excuses herself to find Mielle, a girl in the palace, and Aria's own stepsister. And while she searches, she has a flashback to her previous life. She remembers her execution and how in that timeline, Mielle set Aria up from the beginning to be despised by everyone in the palace. Mielle confesses that she poisoned Aria's mother, and she also tells Aria that she framed her to make it look like Aria was trying to poison Mielle in the same way. Aria swears to herself that she will repay Mielle for her actions and give her what she deserves. Aria is found by her maid Jessie. Jessie is quick to treat Aria's cut on her leg, and Aria regrets treating her so harshly in her past life. Jessica suggests that Aria rest, but as Aria gets into bed, she finds an hourglass under her covers. Aria thanks God as she sees the hourglass as a sign that she has a second chance at her life. Jessica is confused by Aria's behavior, but she remembers that she was sent by Mielle to watch over Aria, and so she sets her resolve to do so. Meanwhile, Count Rosente, Aria's stepfather, meets with Aria's mother and stepbrother. Mielle is also there with her father, the Count, and she wonders what he has brought her from his travels. Aria wants to recite a poem to her father, and Mielle responds with another in hopes of making Aria look bad. It doesn't work, and Mielle is left embarrassed before dinner is served. Aria is set on learning manners and making herself look as good as possible in her new life. Aria's tutor, Sarah Loren, daughter of Viscount Loren, commends Aria on her improvements in her table manners. Aria is determined to become better than Mielle, who excels in the court due to her beauty and charm. Since Aria knows that in the future, Sarah will become a marchioness, she wants to get on Sarah's good side and stay there, in hopes that Sarah will take care of her and be a stepping stone to power for Aria in the future. Aria's good manners have Sarah completely fooled, and she believes that someone must be jealous of Aria, since her mannerisms are becoming so prim and proper. Aria remembers a previous day where she had dinner with her family. Mielle comments that before, she thought that the servants were bringing Aria messed up food due to Aria's plates being so messy. Aria embarrasses Mielle by reminding her that Aria had never seen food in such good state before, and Mielle is admonished by her father for speaking so carelessly. In the present day, Aria asks Sarah to teach her embroidery, and the young girl learns it well. Aria wants to make a handkerchief for her new father in order to get on his good side, but she doesn't want Mielle to find out, in fear that Mielle will start training in embroidery and give her father a gift as well. Mielle does the handkerchief well, and sets her sights on embroidering a golden rose, the family crest of the Dukedom Frederick. Aria intends to wedge herself between Mielle and her future fiancé, Oscar Frederick. Mielle gives her father the handkerchief that she embroidered, all the while being jealous of Aria's skill at the craft. At dinner that evening, Mielle suggests to her father that he invest in leather, as it is a current fashion trend. Aria explains to her father that leather might become unpopular since it has issues in its manufacturing, and she tells her father that fur might be a better investment due to a princess starting a trend with it. You have to admit, Aria is really a smart girl. So sneaky. Aria's father leaves soon after that to go purchase fur to invest in. And before he leaves, Aria makes sure everyone sees her give him the handkerchief that she worked on. Later, Aria has tea with her mother and they discuss finding a husband for Aria. Once again, Oscar Frederick comes up in conversation. Aria's mother suggests that perhaps one lady from the family, either Aria or Mielle, could marry into the Frederick family. Aria is celebrating her small wins. Her brother Kane is off training in the academy, and Mielle won't come out of her room because she is busy building her embroidery skills. As a result, Aria is spending time with her teacher, Sarah. Sarah invites Aria to tea with some of her friends, and Aria uses the opportunity to get rid of rumors about her rude behavior and terrible attitude that had been going around in court. Aria plans to go get new clothes for tea, but one look at her wardrobe has her making a different plan. She orders Jessie, her servant, to get rid of her outdoor clothes, but soon realizes that she cannot go out shopping with her indoor clothes. As a result, Aria concocts a plan to borrow clothes from Mielle. Aria sets all her old clothes on fire and makes a huge show out of not having any more clothes to wear to the servants and to her mother. Her mother orders her to borrow more clothing from someone of a similar build to her, and so Aria makes her way to Mielle. Aria makes a point to borrow the dress that Oscar gave Mielle as a gift for her last birthday, and Mielle has no choice but to let Aria borrow the dress in order to keep her image as the nice, proper lady of the house. Aria arrives at the square to go shopping. She looks around at one shop and chooses to dress modestly in hopes that it will both impress her father and also make him want to spend more money on her. On the way out of the shop, Aria sees a young boy selling newspapers, and she remembers from her past life that he died tragically due to a carriage incident while he was out selling the paper. Aria tells Jessie to pay the boys a month's profit in advance and to buy his paper every time a new one comes out. In the carriage, on the way back to her home, Aria reads the paper and finds rumors on the crown prince. She wonders if it would be too much to have a prince on her side, but her thoughts are cut short by another stop. Aria goes to the shop that repaired her hourglass, and she pays the shop owner double for fixing the trinket so well. She looks around the shop, and as she looks, strange men in cloaks come into the shop. Aria feels as though she is in danger. But before she leaves, she tells the owner to sell his auction ticket that he has resting on the counter. Suddenly, one of the men grabs Aria's arm. He asks her why she told the man to sell the ticket, but Aria is frozen. She feels as if she has met this mysterious man before. Aria cannot figure out who the mysterious man is, but she deduces that he cannot be older than 20. She thinks that he is a nobleman from the countryside, and after some convincing, she gets him to let her arm go. Aria explains that there is a rumor going around that the rich will close the casinos, thus making gambling and auction tickets a waste of time and money. The mysterious noble pulls a sword, and he tells Aria that if she's lying, he will make her regret it. Aria convinces the man that she wouldn't know if it was the truth or not, as it's just a rumor, and he lets her go. As Aria leaves, the noble notes that the Rosente insignia is on Aria's carriage, and the Frederick crest was on her dress. One of the mysterious noble's men assumes that Aria is Mielle, due to the Rosente crest and the Frederick crest on the dress. The noble isn't too sure, as Mielle doesn't suit Aria at all in his eyes. He decides to drop the subject and wants to check on the casinos, much to his men's disappointment. The noble decides to be the one to make the casino go out of business. Meanwhile, Aria has made it home and she wants to complain to her mother about the knights that were with her, as they didn't keep her safe from being grabbed. Instead, Aria decides to mess with the knights and have them run to fetch her things to make up for the fact that they were a little bad at their jobs. Once she is alone, Aria decides to return the dress to Mielle, in hopes that the mysterious noble and his men think that she was Mielle at the shop. Aria watches Mielle go out into the town with the dress that she wore previously. While she watches, Sarah gives Aria the rundown on how the tea party will go. Sarah suggests that Aria prepare some embroidery for the ladies, as noble women exchange gifts in order to build friendships. Aria agrees, and she uses the opportunity to embarrass Mielle once again. Aria makes a lovely handkerchief with a beautiful crest on it. She gifts it to Mielle, and Mielle runs away, not having anything prepared for Aria. Later, Aria gets ready for the tea party, and she reminisces on her old life. She thinks about how after she broke a glass bottle, her life got worse after that point, and she vows to herself to never get to that point again. As she travels to the tea party, Aria has a bad feeling about the event, but pushes the feelings down once she arrives. Aria wins the ladies' pity with sad stories about her time as a poor little girl, and she also wins their favor with her beautiful handkerchiefs. All the ladies are excited to hang out with Aria and want to take her out on the town, but one lady says that it is dangerous to go out. She recounts a rumor about Viscount Louvre running a human trafficking ring out of the basement of the casino in town. Aria is stunned, as these events are different from the past, and she wonders if her revenge and plotting has changed the events of the future. Aria hatches a new plan and orders John, one of her knights, to go do her bidding. Ooh, what does she have plans? John has been tasked to snoop around to find out if the Crown Prince is also responsible for the human trafficking ring. He is warned to stop snooping, and for the meantime, it seems as though Viscount Louvre has been caught. Aria sets her plan in motion, and she asks her mother for tutors. Her first new tutor is Celine from the White family. Aria plans to get Celine on her side and to keep Sarah as a supporter. The next day, the court garden is busy and buzzing. Aria tells Jessie to find out if someone is visiting, and if so, who it is. Aria falls asleep, and when she wakes up, she finds the house quiet. She goes to find Jessie, but instead, Aria finds her brother Kane, Mielle, and Oscar Frederick, Mielle's fiancé. Aria notes that in the past, Oscar and Mielle are to meet later, and wonders if Mielle has been sending letters to her brother Kane in order to speed up the meeting. Aria gets ready in her beautiful hair and clothing, and she joins Oscar and Mielle in the dining room. Mielle hastily thanks Oscar for her dress, and she tells him that she wanted to get him clothing as well. Kane suggests that he and Mielle go shopping, but Mielle protests that a guest shouldn't be left alone. Oscar rebuts that he would not be alone, as Aria is at home as well, much to the dismay of Mielle. Mielle and Kane leave, and Aria plans on when she will give her handkerchief to Oscar. Aria decides to go to the indoor garden for a change of scenery, and while watering the plants, accidentally pours water all over Oscar's head. And we will have to stop right there. Looks like Sir Oscar is all washed up. What will happen next? What will Aria and Mielle get up to? Last episode, we met Aria, a young girl who was born in poverty. After her mother married into a wealthy family, Aria became spoiled, and as a result of her behavior, she grew to be hated in the royal court. Her ways come to an end when she is executed, but a miracle gives Aria a second chance at life. Now Aria is determined to be loved by all. Will she be successful? Find out now. Aria is mortified. She has just poured water all over Oscar's head. She tries her best to wipe Oscar dry, but he tells her that at the rate she is going, she will only end up as wet as well. Aria cannot believe that she has made a mistake this big, and she fears that all her plans will go wrong. Oscar assures her that it is his fault for wandering around without permission, and he notices that Aria is on the verge of crying. Aria notices how kind Oscar is, and she decides that she can exploit his weakness for her gain. Aria takes the opportunity to give Oscar the golden handkerchief that she made of his crest, knowing that a lady giving a man a handkerchief of that caliber expresses interest. Oscar accepts the handkerchief, and Aria has a servant run Oscar a bath and get him new clothes. Later that day, at a meal, Mielle presents Oscar another gift, this time from her. New pen tips. The conversation is going well, but it is not on Aria, so she decides to act ill. The time for Oscar to leave has come. Soon after he leaves the palace, Aria's mother rushes in, wanting Aria to tell her everything. As the two talk, gifts from Oscar's family arrive, and they come with a message. One gift is to go to Mielle, and the other is to Aria. Each girl also gets a letter from Oscar, and Aria teases Mielle and tries to goad her into reading her letter out loud. The gifts are open, with Aria's gift being a dress, matching shoes, and a hairpin. Aria decides to wear the pin on her way out to an outing, and she decides to go to a fancy jeweler on her way back in order to get something for Oscar. At the outing, Aria meets with her new friends from the tea party, and they fawn over her. As Aria takes her leave, she notices that her coachman is not the same man she arrived with. She questions the man and deduces that he is a murderer, sent by Mielle to assassinate her. Aria sends the man away and realizes that in this timeline, Mielle will reveal her true colors quicker than before. Aria sends one of her guards away to find a different coach to take her home, and while he searches, she goes to the jeweler's to find something for Oscar. Aria lands on a very heavy blue brooch, and she is hopeful that he will feel burdened by such an extraordinary gift. She also orders 5 smaller brooches with the Rosente family crest. The shop owner tells Aria that the gifts will be ready the following day, and he also gives her a small blue necklace. As Aria waits for her carriage, she plans on how she will bring Mielle to her downfall. She thinks about framing the family for treason, but she's distracted by the blue-haired noble, who she spots on the street. Aria is unsettled by seeing him so soon, and tries to rush into her carriage to go home. As she boards it, a bouquet falls at her feet. The blue-haired noble is standing there, and he picks up the flowers, claiming that they are a gift for Aria. The blue-haired noble explains to Aria that because of her advice, he was able to save his money from the casino. Aria doesn't know how to respond, as she doesn't know the noble's intentions. She asks for his name, and he responds with just the name Asher. When Aria tries to ask what family he is from, he doesn't give her an answer, telling her that for the meantime, he would just prefer her to know his given name. Aria is eager to go home because the entire situation has made her uncomfortable. But Asher asks to kiss her hand before she goes. Aria refuses, saying that his behavior is quite different from the last time they met. Asher apologizes for being so aggressive, and Aria leaves for her home. As she boards her carriage, Aria trips and stumbles, dropping her flowers and stepping on them in the process. Asher laughs and throws the flowers away, saying that they aren't suitable for a lady anymore. On the ride back, Aria tries to figure out what Asher's motives could be. Back at her home, Aria is confronted with troubling news. Her previous coachman has been hospitalized with food poisoning, and her previous carriage had parts missing from it. Dun dun dun! Aria suspects that Mielle was the one behind all of these things, and she goes to tell her mother about the dangerous carriage. Aria's mother flies into a rage and gathers all the servants to explain what happened. Aria suggests that someone set up the whole incident, and she says the police must be called to investigate. Mielle asks if calling the police is too much, and Aria questions her on her involvement. Mielle is nervous because Aria's questions are getting more serious. Aria asks how Mielle could know how much damage the carriage had, and when Mielle can't think of an answer, Aria cries out, saying that if Mielle was in trouble as she had been in, Aria would be upset and would want to get to the bottom of the situation. Wow, someone get that kid an Oscar! Aria suggests that her mother make a decision over the matter, and secretly, Aria is wanting Mielle to let her servant take the blame for the incident. Before their mother can make a decision, Mielle's servant collapses. The next day, Mielle takes her meals in her room, and Aria and her mother wonder if they will see her when the decision regarding the carriage incident is made. Meanwhile, Sir Oscar's gift arrives at the Rosente home, and the brooches are beautiful. But there is no time to wait because Aria's mother has reached a verdict. She fires the coachman, and she makes the coachman who left his post in charge of cleaning the stables. Mielle isn't feeling well because she's been worrying the entire night. But before she retreats back to her room, Aria gives Mielle the necklace that she received from the jeweler. Later that day, Aria thinks about how it seemed that Mielle was being advised by her maid Emma. While she decides what to do, Aria also sends a letter to Oscar, thanking him and presenting her brooch to him. She writes the letter and flips her hourglass mindlessly. But something is wrong. Aria is standing face to face with her maid, whom she just sent to deliver a letter. Aria is confused and looks down to see the letter that she just sent, still half written on her desk. Talk about déjà vu. Aria rewrites her letter and sends her maid away, leaving her to figure out what just happened. Aria decides to take a nap, and she's woken up by a maid checking on her. Aria dismisses her and once again mindlessly plays with her hourglass. Suddenly, the same maid checks on Aria again. Aria realizes that the hourglass is the key to going back into time, and through trial and error, she discovers rules of the hourglass. Turning the hourglass lets you go back in time once a day, and each turn is worth about 5 minutes. To test her theory, Aria goes to her math lesson and insults her teacher, only to turn the hourglass and for her teacher to not know what happened. Aria uses her hourglass to cause trouble around the house for about 2 weeks before she realizes that there hasn't been any news from the delivery man about her message and gift to Oscar. Aria is told by one of her knights that Oscar accepted the gift, but has not been able to respond due to how busy his academy is. A few more days pass, and a letter finally does arrive from Oscar, stating that he would like her to set a time and date to meet him so that he can speak to her in person. Aria writes a response immediately, and she gives it to Jessie, her maid, to give to Oscar. Jessie is uneasy with the letter, as she knows that Mielle is in love with Oscar. Will Jessie deliver the letter? During breakfast one morning, Aria receives an economics book she ordered. She wants to study hard to be credible, as women are not educated at the academy in her time. Aria decides to become like a noblewoman that she knew in her past life, who concentrated on business and money. This way, she would have a good foundation for her life. Sarah comes back from her travel, and while they talk, Aria requests a handkerchief embroidered by Sarah. Aria wants the handkerchiefs to match to show their bond to everyone. Aria wants the connection to be able to connect her to the Marquess, as she knows that soon Sarah will start dating him. The two talk about their social debuts, and they promise to help each other out in society. It's Aria's birthday! Aria is anxiously awaiting a visit from Sir Oscar, and while she waits, Aria decides to open her presents. Sarah presents Aria the handkerchief and new gloves. Oh! And Aria also shows off a teddy bear with jewels in it to show off her wealth. Her father only got it for Aria because her careful planning of the fur stocks caused him to earn extra money. But Aria thinks that by having the bear, she can subtly remind the girls gathered that they will never be as rich as she is. So sneaky, sneaky. During the party, Mielle arrives and claims that Aria purposefully did not invite her to the gathering. Aria tells Mielle that she simply didn't have the opportunity to invite Mielle as she was sick in her room, but she realizes that it looks bad that she didn't try, as they live in the same house. Aria covers her mistake by saying that she is thankful for Mielle's good health, once again looking like the innocent stepsister. Later that night, Sir Oscar arrives. What does he want? Mielle is the first to greet Oscar, and the two talk about Aria's birthday. Mielle explains that she was not invited and how that upset her. She invites Oscar to her own birthday party as it is coming up, and Oscar reluctantly agrees. Aria arrives, and Mielle leaves. Aria shows him that she has been wearing the hairpin he gave her, and she tells him that he is the first person that she has gotten a gift for. Oscar actually brought the brooch back to return, but Aria convinces him to wear it instead. Oscar gifts Aria a bouquet of flowers, and Aria asks to be his pen pal. She convinces him to be pen pals, even though Oscar is nervous about constantly writing to his fiancée's sister. Poor baby needs to stand up for himself. The next morning, Aria considers getting a watch, as she used her hourglass to make sure that Oscar said yes to her request. Jessie gives Aria her lunch, and Aria tells Jessie that she likes her more than Jessie thinks. What is Aria up to? Aria pins a brooch on Jessie, and it is the brooch of the Rosente estate. She then sends Jessie to get her a watch from the jewelers that reset every 5 minutes. As Jessie leaves, Sarah arrives, and as her own maid is gone, Aria picks one of Mielle's maids to bring tea. She decides that she would like one of Mielle's maids on her side, and Aria tries to keep the maid until Jessie returns. The maid refuses, and Aria asks about the freckled maid instead. The freckled girl is named Annie, and she is the youngest maid out of all. After Aria receives the info she wants, she takes her hourglass and rewinds time, using her knowledge to request Annie. Sarah and Aria discuss their social debuts in more detail, and they dance to practice for the debut. Their dancing entrances Annie, and suddenly, Jessie bursts into the room. Aria dismisses Annie, and later, at dinner, Mielle tells Aria that she can pick any of her maids to help when Jessie is away. Annie is chosen, and Aria uses her closeness to dazzle and flirt with Annie. Aria, what are you up to? Aria is still on her path to ruin Mielle and her family, and she has decided that the easiest way to do this is to steal Mielle's fiancé, Oscar, away from her. Aria has been making relationships and plans with everyone close to Mielle in the hopes that she can turn them all against her stepsister. Will she get closer to her goal? Find out now. Aria is working harder than ever to ruin Mielle, and she wants to get close to Mielle's young maid, Annie, as a part of her plan. She gives Annie many gifts, a pretty red bow, expensive makeup, and even a few lessons on how to behave in a proper manner in hopes that Annie will want to leave Mielle and serve Aria permanently. Aria's tactics don't work immediately how she'd like them to, but there are bigger matters to be worried about. Oscar hasn't written back in quite some time, and he promised to be Aria's pen pal. Aria wonders what could be wrong since Sir Oscar doesn't seem like the type to lie. And on the day of Mielle's birthday party, a carriage arrives and Aria thinks that it must be Sir Oscar. Who is in the carriage? It's their father. He has come back for Mielle's birthday and he has brought a young man with him named Rain Pino. Aria doesn't remember Rain from the past and in fact has never seen him before. Is the timeline becoming mixed up again? Aria still wants to embarrass Mielle at her birthday party, and when she sees that Mielle's dress looks similar to the dress that Sir Oscar gave her, Aria hatches an idea. She changes out of her old dress into the one that looks like Mielle's in order to give her a gift of flowers in front of all her guests. This way, it will look like Oscar didn't put much thought into the dress, and it would seem as though Mielle isn't at all that special to her fiancé. I know she's our protagonist, but the level of trickery Aria plays is insane. She's playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers. Anyway, as the guests whisper about the dresses, Mielle's brother, Kane, comes back. And guess who he's brought with him? Sir Oscar is here. Aria is confused and a little angry at Oscar's appearance. For one, he never appeared at any of Mielle's birthday parties in the past, so the timeline might be getting messy again. For another thing, he never replied to Aria's letter, and Aria doesn't like that one bit. As she wonders, Aria notices Kane giving her some weird looks. And honestly, dude, she's your stepsister. Let's not get weird. Oscar's also giving Aria a look, and Aria deduces that he is developing feelings for her and is feeling guilty about it. Aria excuses herself from everyone's company, but she isn't surprised when Sir Oscar follows her and finds her. Oscar sits down to talk to Aria, and the two discuss the party. Aria flirts with Oscar, and Oscar does his best to not let his new feelings for Aria show. Poor thing. Aria declares them friends, and Oscar seems to be fine with them just being friends, as he doesn't want to hurt Mielle's feelings. At dinner, Mielle gives her father a handkerchief as a gift, and she shows off a necklace that Oscar gave her. Aria isn't too worried, as she wants Oscar to be stressed about picking between the two of them. Everyone at the party receives a handkerchief from Mielle, except for Aria, but Aria claims that she can wait since the two live in the same house. Days pass, and Aria still does not have the handkerchief, and she expresses her disappointment about the situation to Annie as the two get ready for a gathering being held for Aria's teacher, Sarah. After Annie tells Aria how Mielle embroidered her handkerchief so well, Aria pins a brooch on Annie and tells her to become her maid, and Annie accepts. Rain is back, and he's brought more gifts for Mielle. He says that the gifts are from his master, but when Aria's mother asks who exactly his master is, he refuses to reveal who it is. Aria tries to deduce who it is, and says that Rain's master must be foreign since everyone in the Empire knows of Mielle's engagement. Rain tells her that she is wrong, and Aria is told to wait to meet him, which will happen soon. The next day, as Aria is getting ready for gathering after Sarah's coming-of-age ceremony, Annie dresses up a bit and follows Aria to be her attending maid while at the party. They all wait for Sarah, who comes in late. Sarah explains that she was held up by the Marquess, who picked up her dropped handkerchief and asked to keep it. Sarah tells the ladies that she and the Marquess danced, and that he sent her gifts as well. You go, girl! Aria tells Sarah that the Marquess is a good person and that she needs to be happy and discover her own feelings first, and Sarah thanks her. Annie has listened to all of this, and she realizes that working for Aria can make her dreams to be important and rich come true. Aria and Sarah discuss the Marquess in private, with Aria explaining tips and tricks on how to flirt and give the Marquess gloves and other gifts to the man. As the two leave, Aria sees a carriage, and in it, Rain has more gifts for Mielle. He asks to see Mielle privately, and Aria refuses, saying that she doesn't want her sister alone with a man. In reality, she doesn't want anyone getting close to Mielle in order to isolate her, but our sneaky Aria is good at hiding her intentions. Sarah steps in, suggesting that they all accompany Rain when he speaks to Mielle. Aria, Rain, and Sarah have tea and discuss Mielle and Rain's master. And Rain says that his master had seen Mielle's intellect for himself. He hints that Mielle told his master some advice on a fur business, and Aria realizes that the Count took her own idea and gave Mielle the credit. Aria rages, slamming things on the table and ground in front of Sarah and Rain. But suddenly, she turns her hourglass, and the conversation resumes 5 minutes in the past. Mielle joins the gathering, and Rain asks her a question regarding the casino where human trafficking took place. Mielle is in favor of reopening the casino and putting a statue in front to honor the crown prince. Aria is not in favor, seeing that it would make people turn against the imperial palace due to the money they could lose there. Later, Aria and Mielle are having dinner with their father, and he suggests that he wrap his fur business up and find another. Mielle suggests a fabric that is light since spring is on the way, and she suggests a silk or soft velvet to invest in. Aria is also asked, but she has a new strategy now. She doesn't want to give the family any good ideas, so she just agrees with Mielle. Later that day, Annie asks to go to the spring festival, and Aria gives her 2 days off. On the day of the festival, Aria dresses Annie up in her own clothes that Annie will cause the other maids to be jealous. Annie leaves, and Jessie arrives. Aria asks Jessie if she wants to go to the festival as well, and Jessie suggests that they both go together. At the festival, Aria enjoys herself with Jessie and her knight, and she runs into Asher once again. He asks her if she's been receiving gifts, as her clothes are very modest. Suddenly, a bomb goes off in the middle of the festival. Asher grabs Aria's arm and runs, separating her from Jessie. Asher and Aria stop to rest far away from the festival. Asher is a little lost, and Aria has no clue where she is. Aria turns around to try to head back to the estate, but her foot is hurt. Asher notices and offers to carry her, but Aria refuses, opting instead to take her shoes off and bear the pain. Asher follows Aria, saying that he would be useful to her. He tells Aria that he knows a lot about her and promises to tell her about him when they grow closer. He turns and walks away, and just in time, Jessie and Aria's knights find Aria and bring her back to the estate. Back at the estate, Annie tells Aria what she found out about the festival. Apparently, too many fireworks went off at once, making a huge explosion. She also tells Aria that Mielle sent a letter to Sir Frederick, and the letter was full of things about Oscar. Mielle's personal maid is determined to make sure Mielle stays happy. She has looked after Mielle like she is her own child, and now Oscar's sister is here to discuss the engagement between Oscar and Mielle. Oscar's sister Isis tells Mielle that she will scold her brother for being too busy to speak to Mielle, and she assures Mielle that the engagement will go as planned. Oscar arrives, and they all talk about how the engagement will secure power for Oscar's family and for Mielle and her family as well. Oscar doesn't look too sure about the engagement, and Isis asks if the rumor that he has feelings for Aria is true. Uh-oh. Isis slaps Oscar, and she tells him to get rid of his feelings by getting rid of the source of them. Oscar protests, saying that he is always listening to his sister and doing what she wants. Isis tells Oscar to follow her lead and write a letter to Mielle and apologize for being cold to her. Oscar writes a letter to Aria as well, and he tells her that he can no longer write to her. What will Aria do now? Oscar has just written to Aria, explaining that they can no longer be pen pals. Aria does not understand why he is trying to shut her out, and she is not happy about his decision. Annie goes to retrieve cold water for Aria, and when she comes back, she has bad news. Oscar's letter to Mielle has arrived as well, and he actually mentioned his engagement to her in the letter. Aria doesn't think that Oscar really wrote the letter, as when Annie recites what it said, it sounds too flowery for Oscar to have written. Aria deduces that Isis must have written it to make her brother look good and to secure the engagement. Annie confirms that Aria's theory makes sense, as Oscar is indifferent to Mielle. But when Isis visits, Mielle gets more gifts from Oscar. Aria tries to think on who is more powerful in Oscar's family, himself or his sister. As Aria knows from the past that soon Isis would be married to the royal family, Aria had been focusing on Oscar to secure her place in society. Aria realizes that her fate is actually in Isis's hands, since she is the one telling her brother how to woo Mielle, and is making sure Oscar stays engaged to Mielle. Later at dinner, Mielle is wearing a hairpin that she received from the Frederick family. Aria notices Mielle's maid looking pleased as well as Mielle, and she vows to get rid of both of them. Mielle is asked once again for advice on taxes, and she thinks that it would be best to entrust them to officials. Aria suggests setting up warehouses near the capital to get around extra taxes that come with moving goods. And Aria's stepfather and Sir Rain love the idea. Rain brings up how Mielle came up with the trend of fur, and Aria's mother gives everyone a side-eye as she knows that the fur trend was her daughter's idea. Will she do something about it? Mielle leaves in the morning to go to Isis's birthday party, wearing a dress given to her by Sir Oscar and Isis. At the party, Mielle does her best to give herself a solid foundation in society, and so she finds Isis to speak to. Isis compliments her dress, and Mielle explains that Oscar was the one who gifted it to her. Sir Oscar arrives at the party as well, and everything is going according to Isis's plan, until the prince shows up. And guess what? The prince is Asher? Oh, wow. When Asher shows up, he is surprised to hear that Mielle is at the party, but he welcomes her nonetheless. However, when he takes a closer look, he realizes that Mielle is not the Mielle that he knows. He's gotten Aria and Mielle mixed up, and he believed that Aria's name was Mielle. He wonders where Aria is while everyone else tries to figure out what their relationship could possibly be. What are we going to do now? Things are heating up. Aria's plans to ruin Mielle and the Resente family are beginning to get tangled up with the Frederick family, who is the family of Oscar, Mielle's fiancé, and the royal family. Can Aria get everything under control, or will all her plans be wasted? Find out now. Prince Asher is finally getting caught up on who exactly he's been meeting and talking to. Turns out, he has thought that Aria was Mielle this entire time. He is amazed that Aria has learned so much about the aristocracy in such a short time, and he is impressed that she is nothing like the rumors that he has heard about her. Asher actually planned to go to Lady Isis's birthday party in order to confirm, once and for all, if Aria is who he thinks she is. Once Prince Asher is at the party, he comes face to face with Mielle, who is not Aria. Asher is disappointed and leaves. Isis wants to know what is going on between Mielle and Asher. Mielle has no idea what is going on, since it's the first time she has met him. Oscar escorts Mielle away to rest since the whole situation has upset her, and Isis tries to get the party back on track. As the party continues, Isis sends one of her knights to find out what happened between Mielle and Prince Asher. Meanwhile, back at the Resente estate, Aria is having a good time eating food and thinking on her next steps in her master plan. Her planning is interrupted by Mielle coming home, escorted by no one else but Oscar. Mielle fell asleep after her scare at Isis's party, and Oscar didn't want to wake her, so here they both are at the Resente estate in the middle of the night. Oscar tries to leave, but Mielle and her father beg him to stay, as it is late, and the guest rooms are available for him. Aria cannot believe that through the entire exchange, Oscar didn't glance at her once. And that night, she wanders the estate, trying to think about what to do. She spots Oscar standing on a balcony, but as soon as he sees her, he turns away. Aria dashes to get her hourglass, and she reverses time so that she can speak to Oscar. She begs him not to abandon her, and she reaches out to hug him and cry. Poor girl. The chapter opens with Aria dreaming about acquiring wealth. During the previous night, she fainted in Oscar's arms due to her using the hourglass in a fragile state. Aria is mortified because it looked as though she was begging Oscar to stay. After Aria fainted, Oscar carried Aria back to her room. He believes that she must be lonely in the mansion all by herself, and he believes that is the reason why she came to find him. Oscar doesn't want to make Aria upset anymore, and he vows not to. He plans on becoming family with Aria by marrying Mielle, and that way, his sister won't be able to harm anyone in the family. Aria doesn't know what could possibly be worse, that she was so vulnerable in front of Oscar, or that he carried her back to her room. Jesse interrupts Aria's thinking by asking if she would like to go outside. Aria refuses, but Jesse opens the window to let light in, and they both see Mielle gathered with her friends outside. Suddenly, Jesse rushes in with news. She has gossip that she has heard about Mielle, and it is about the night that she returned home with Oscar. Word has gotten out that the prince questioned Mielle at Isis's birthday party, and it has also been discovered that the gifts sent to Mielle were prepared by Isis's maid. Aria realizes that because Isis's maid sent the gifts, she actually did succeed in seducing Oscar. Aria decides to start targeting Lady Isis, since she is the one who stands in the way between her and manipulating Oscar. Aria gets dressed and goes outside, where she is mocked by Mielle and her friends. Aria explains that she needs new clothes as she has grown more, and she hints at Mielle's body still being childlike despite her growing age. Once she is in her carriage, Aria wonders if perhaps using the hourglass speeds her growth and ages her. While out shopping, Aria comes across a newspaper that talks about nobles losing business partners, and she wonders if she can use any of the information to her advantage. Aria, what are you going to do now? While Aria is speaking with her maids, Asher finds her. He is holding another bouquet of flowers and asks to discuss private matters with her over tea. The two discuss the last time Asher gave Aria flowers, with Aria deducing that the flowers came from the Imperial Palace. Asher is surprised and delighted to see that Aria is so smart, and he tells her that he has paid attention to her. Asher knows that Aria was the one who advised the Count on the fur business and tells her that despite the rumors, he knows that she is very wise. Asher invites Aria to a meeting that he is hosting since he wants her to share her knowledge with the rest of the nobles. Aria isn't so sure, as she is a woman, but Asher reassures her that he is totally down with listening to her ideas. He's a feminist icon for sure. Asher wants to give Aria time to clear her head and think on his offer, and he leaves. Aria's maids rush to her, asking if she's okay, but Aria is confused by the encounter with the prince. Later at the palace, Rain comes back with gifts. He is carrying more flowers, lilies for Mielle, and tulips for Aria. It is Rain's last day in the Rosente household, but Aria is more concerned with the flowers that he gave her than him leaving. The tulips were grown in the Imperial Palace's own personal garden, and Aria wonders why Rain's master would go through the trouble of growing them and giving them. Aria's thoughts are interrupted by her father, who asks her what she thinks of Rain. Count Rosente seems to want to pair Aria off with Rain to make connections, but Aria is not feeling it at all. Mielle decides to egg the Count on, saying that Aria and Rain would make a good match. Aria refuses in the nicest way possible, proving that she is way more patient than I am, and the matter is dropped with the Count saying that Rain could come back and try again later. Later that day, as Aria is relaxing in her room, Rain once again interrupts her peace. He hands her a letter, saying that it is from his master. The letter confirms that Prince Asher is Rain's master, and it asks Aria to reply and give the answer back to Rain to give to the prince. Rain explains that Asher mistook Mielle for Aria, which explained why the prince sent so many gifts to her. He goes on to explain that Asher isn't interested in Mielle in the slightest, and that the gifts were all meant for Aria. Aria doesn't understand why Prince Asher is so interested in her, and Rain explains that Asher simply wants to use her knowledge. Secretly, Rain knows that Asher also wants Aria at his side for himself. Ah! Aria accepts Asher's proposal, agreeing to go to the meeting. Later, at a gathering, Aria's reputation is doing amazingly. Ladies gather around her and tell her that the rumors about her couldn't be true at all, since she is so lovely. Sarah is there as well, listening in on the conversation, and when the topic turns to suitors that Aria might have, Sarah feels jealous. Sarah, what will you do? Aria has appointed Jessie and Annie, her two maids, as her playmates. The role is usually filled by nobles, but Aria wants Jessie and Annie to be her playmates because she knows that they are loyal to her. Clever girl. Emma is sending a new maid from Mielle to spy on Aria, and so Aria wants to be careful in the presence of the new maid. The new maid's name is Viri, and Aria remembers her from her past life. Viri was the one who poisoned Mielle on Aria's behalf, setting Aria up to be beheaded. Aria decides to mess with Viri in order to get her revenge. Aria criticizes everything that Viri does, slapping her hands every time she messes up. Viri dashes away to get a break, and Aria asks Annie and Jessie to help her discipline her new maid. Later, Aria attends Prince Asher's meeting. She is still hesitant due to being surrounded by men. One man, Vika, makes a point to introduce himself to Aria before the meeting begins. The meeting centers around the casino. Foreign countries have begun to take interest in the casino since the prince has taken over management of it. Aria suggests giving the responsibility of the casino to the nobles instead of the crown, so that when things go wrong, the people wouldn't blame the prince. Vika argues that this will make the prince look weak, and that the people would criticize him for not managing an important business in the kingdom. Aria fights for her opinion, saying that in the long run, the casino won't benefit the kingdom and would be a lost cause. The men are stunned, and they ask Aria how she could possibly know that. Prince Asher stops the men, saying that he likes Aria's idea, as it would give the crown a way to discipline the nobles, since the crown has been wary of them for quite some time. The meeting is dismissed, and Prince Asher asks Aria what she thought of the meeting. Aria answers his question with a question. She wants to know just who Prince Asher really is. Aria wants to know why Prince Asher has hidden his identity from her for so long. Asher explains that he wanted to know more about Aria and that she is interesting to him. The fur business idea caught his attention, and Aria wonders if the prince likes to collect smart people to further himself in society. Aria asks again to reveal his identity fully, but Asher denies her, as he doesn't have any protection against aristocratic families like the Rosentes, should word get out that he is the crown prince. Asher simply says that he is attracted to Aria's intelligence, and Aria is mesmerized by him. Aria turns to go, flustered, but Asher follows, asking if she herself has any idea who he might really be. Aria reveals that she deduced that he is the crown prince, surprising Asher. God, this girl is smart. Asher is surprised that Aria has caught on so quickly, but he decides to let her leave and invites her to the next meeting. Meanwhile, at the Rosente household, Rain has sent more flowers. Mielle tells her father that Rain must have feelings for Aria, as he keeps sending flowers to the household. Aria interrupts Mielle, asking about an update on a warehouse that she suggested he get. Count Rosente says that the warehouse is doing well, and Aria decides to see how things are doing in the business district for herself. The next day, she gets a fake ID and takes Annie with her to the casino. Aria goes to the casino for several days, winning games each day, thanks to her hourglass. Aria is so clever, but what could she be up to? Aria is still at the casino, and she's a little weak after using the hourglass for 3 days in a row. She splits up with Annie in order to find a carriage to leave. Aria is chased down by the gamblers who want to know her secret to winning, and she runs away from them all throughout the casino. She runs into a man with a golden lion mask, and he shows her a rented room and allows her to hide there as the gamblers look for her. The man in the lion mask tells Aria that he has heard much about her, and that he is interested in her. He asks how she could possibly know the correct card so many times in a row. Aria explains that she is just lucky, and a knock at the door reveals that a man outside has dispersed the crowd. As soon as Aria leaves, the man in the golden mask lifts his head to reveal that he is, in fact, Prince Asher. He is at the casino with another noble, Vika, on a tour to assess how well the casino is doing. They are also monitoring Viscount Vigu, who says that he wants to buy the casino. Prince Asher plans on keeping the transaction a secret from Lady Isis, but he has no worry since he knows that as a noble, Viscount Vigu will want to acquire wealth on his own without others knowing. It seems everyone in this kingdom is sneaky, huh? Asher thinks about how to fix the power imbalance between the rich nobles and the poor lower class, and he wonders why Aria keeps coming up in his mind. I think he has a crush. Meanwhile, Aria is regrouping after escaping the casino. She has finally gotten enough money to start enacting her plans, so Aria asks Annie to get her brother and bring him to her. Andrew, Annie's older brother, has arrived, and Aria orders him to buy sugar in bulk. A little while later, Aria overhears her house teachers discussing a power struggle that is happening in some families of noble houses. Sounds like things are heating up in the kingdom. Aria's eavesdropping is interrupted by Sarah, who invites Aria to a meal with the Marquess. However, before Aria can get to dinner with the Marquess, she first goes back to another meeting with the nobles and Asher. The meeting discusses nobles who have been losing money through lost clients, and those in the meeting are worried that the lost money will lead to power imbalances and blame going to the crown. The casino makes enough money to make up for the lost funds, but Aria is curious about the relationship between the casino, the crown prince, and the Viscount Vigue. When Aria is told that the prince intends to sell the casino to the Viscount, Aria is surprised, as this did not happen in the past. Asher explains that the crown prince surveyed the casino and picked the right person to sell to in order to exploit them, and Aria agrees that a noble would be the correct choice to avoid criticism of the crown. After the meeting is dismissed, Asher chases Aria down to tell her that she was amazing in the meeting. Ooh, is Asher falling for our Aria? Isis is making her way to the Resente estate, and she is very annoyed that Viscount Vigue has bought the casino. She meets Mielle at the entrance, and the two sit down to talk about Oscar. Isis compliments a blue brooch that Oscar gave her, and she lies and says that he has a similar one and is wearing it as a couple's brooch for her. Isis comments that Aria is rude, as she did not come down to see her, but Mielle tells Isis that it is better that the two don't meet at all. Isis ignores Mielle, and she makes a maid bring Aria to her. Aria's manners are better than Isis could have anticipated, so there is nothing Isis can use to incriminate Aria. They dismiss Aria, and when Aria goes back to her room, she meets Annie, who has gotten a call from her brother. Andrew has been successful in buying Aria sugar, and now Aria has more pieces in place to get more money for her plans. Later at dinner, the food is not good. Count Resente reveals that because sugar is so expensive in the kingdom, it will be hard to get good food. Aria is glad to hear this, and she keeps the knowledge of her own personal sugar stores secret. The next day during tea, Annie asks Aria if she wants to just sell her sugar by herself. Aria wants to stay low profile and opts instead to wait, as once her investment in the sugar meets her target, she will be sure to get the money back and profit from all of it. Aria wants to keep her stocks as diverse as possible to mitigate any loss she might have. Sounds like Aria could have been a Bitcoin bro, huh? Aria hatches an idea to use perfumed hair oil as it smells sweet, to make things smell and taste better. She remembers the name of a noble from whom she bought the oil from, Baron Burboom, and she writes him a letter asking to invest in more supplies in exchange for more money for oil and more oil sent to Aria. In a few weeks, Baron Burboom sends gifts to Aria, thanking her for her foresight, as it made him very profitable. The problem? Baron Burboom assumed that Aria was a man, and he sent a man's cravat as a gift. What will Aria do now? Aria arrives to Baron Burboom and returns the gift. Burboom is surprised to see Aria, a woman, and he begs her forgiveness. While at the Baron's store, Aria buys many perfumed oils, and Burboom gives Aria and Annie more oils and beautiful bouquets as a gift. He even calls Annie beautiful. On the way back to the mansion, Aria considers marrying Annie off to the Baron, as it would benefit Aria to have the connection. The problem, though, is that the two don't have a relationship, so Aria gets rid of all the oils by giving them away to the maids of the estate, and then promises to send Annie back out to get more. That way, Annie would have to build a relationship with the Baron. Later, at dinner, Aria notices that her food tastes fine, while the others at the table cannot eat their food. She smells perfumed oil and looks at the maids, who smile back at her. Looks like Aria is building relationships wonderfully. Rain is back again. He brought sugar and honey for Mielle and a huge present for Aria. A man in a cloak takes it up to Aria's room, and when he takes off his cloak, he reveals that it is Asher. Asher explains that he just wanted to see Aria. He is so cute. That is so sweet. However, Rain comes and says that it is time for Asher to go, and Asher promises to meet again soon. Aria opens the present, and in it, there are pretty jewels and dresses. Aria thinks that Asher is cute for getting her the presents, but she no longer exploits men, so she doesn't know what to do. Later, Aria dismisses her tutors to get more to train her in financial matters. Aria also receives a letter from Sarah, who wants to meet her soon for a meal with the Marquess. Once Aria arrives at the estate of the Marquess, she is greeted by the Marquess and Sarah. They both thank Aria for setting them up together, and Aria wishes them happiness. Is Aria losing some of her edge? Another year has passed, and Aria is planning for her birthday once again. She wants another modest party, to make contrast of Mielle's lavish one that will come right after. At Mielle's party, the ladies talk about Aria poorly, and Annie wants to teach them all a lesson. But Aria isn't paying much attention to them. She is keeping an eye on Mielle and Isis, and she is surprised that Isis comes out to make an announcement on behalf of Oscar and Mielle. What could she want to say? Isis announced that the engagement between Oscar and Mielle is finalized, and Aria rushes out. She is upset as Oscar was her best emotional weapon against Mielle, and now he is unusable. Aria finds a box with yellow roses and opens it to find a red brooch that she had given Oscar. Later at dinner, Count Rosente discusses when the engagement ceremony for Mielle would be. Mielle spies the red brooch that Aria is wearing, and later that night, she breaks down in anger. Mielle thinks that Aria wants Oscar for herself. So what will she do? Mielle is finally catching on, realizing that Aria plans to ruin her and her family. She wants to get to Aria before Aria gets to her, and so she does her best to scheme and plan with her maids and Lady Isis. Will she be successful? Or will Aria once again get the upper hand? Find out now. Mielle's maid Emma is checking on her after a breakdown that Mielle has had. After Mielle confirms that she is fine, she asks if there's any word from the maid that she sent to spy on Aria. The new maid, Veri, isn't having much luck as Aria, Annie, and Jessie keep her so busy that she doesn't have time to report back to Mielle. Mielle decides to write a letter to Oscar and Lady Isis, but her maid advises her against it, as several bankruptcies have been gripping the nobles. Mielle's maid vows to take care of things herself, and Mielle suggests putting insect repellent in Aria's tea. Emma takes the suggestion, and in the meantime, she tells Mielle to worry about a new faction that is composed of young nobles being successful in new businesses that they are creating. Emma suggests that Mielle and Lady Isis align themselves with these nobles, as more connections mean more money and power for them. Mielle invites them, and Aria is wondering why Mielle would bother to invite lower-level nobles for a tea party. As this never happened in the past, Aria decides to invite herself to the tea party to check on Mielle herself. Aria joins the party, and the nobles there pay attention to her, leaving Mielle out of the spotlight. Aria encourages the women to have a personal hand in each of their businesses, contradicting Mielle, who believes that the noble women should just manage their households. The lady seems to like Aria more than Mielle, but Aria is surprised that Mielle even thought to invite the women and tried to make connections with them. Mielle has Emma give out rose-shaped brooches to the women in attendance, but it seems that these gifts are too extravagant for the women. The women turn them down, and Mielle cuts the meeting short, also informing the nobles that there will not be another meeting. As Mielle leaves, Aria volunteers to host the next meeting, but the women invite her to a meeting of their own. Rain is with Prince Asher, and he has a report on the Baron Burboom and his associates. The prince has received an invitation to their meeting, and Rain suggests that the prince goes. The prince wants the investor of Baron Burboom to be on his side if they are not a part of the aristocratic faction, as the investor has made the Baron very rich. Prince Asher agrees to go, and Rain has another report about the nobles who tried to send the prince away from the capital. The Fredericks, Isis and Oscar's family, have been pressuring the emperor to release all the luxury items that were held up in the capital. As a result, the emperor wants Prince Asher back home as soon as possible. Asher agrees to let luxury items back into the market, which includes sugar, and the two speak about the person who ramped up sugar prices in the market in the first place. Looks like Aria is shaking things up even when she isn't around. Rain suggests that Prince Asher visit Aria, and he mentions that it would be easy due to his powers. Asher explains that he would suffer an adverse reaction to using his powers, as there is such a large distance between Aria and him. Later, Prince Asher writes a letter to Marquess Vincent's office, telling him to sell all luxury goods at less than half of their current value. Vincent wonders why the prince is attacking the aristocratic faction so hard, but he isn't complaining since the faction holds monopolies everywhere, from luxury goods to the casinos. As a matter of fact, the casino is in trouble, as the prince has gone and arrested everyone inside for tax evasion and frauds. The news reaches Aria, and while she is happy that she was right, she worries that if the aristocrats fall, that she and her family will go down with them. Is she right? In the meantime, Aria is goading Vary into showing her true colors by continuing to bully her. Will Vary fall for the trap? The Rosente family, minus Aria, are getting anxious with the dropping price of luxury goods. Aria's father cannot believe that the price drop has happened, as he thought that Vincent was a neutral party between the crown and the aristocracy. It has also come to light that a book containing those who were involved in the corruption of the casino has fallen into the hands of the prince. Aria wonders if her actions have caused a butterfly effect, and she starts to wonder if perhaps Asher is a secret child of the emperor. Later, Aria gets ready for the meeting she is to have with the businesswomen of the noble families. She arrives at the meeting and is happy to see Baron Burboom in attendance. Annie seems pretty glad he's there too. Another mystery noble, Louis Pinonua, arrives at the meeting and he greets Burboom. In reality, Pinonua is Asher in disguise, but in order to get an unbiased view on the nobles, he must show up in secret. Aria and Asher catch each other's eyes, and they're both surprised to find the other there. Aria tries to put Asher on the spot in order to see what his intentions are, and she asks what the business is that his investor is backing. Asher's business idea? A school. Asher plans on establishing a school in the capital, and the school would accept anyone, regardless of wealth or status. It would train commoners in business, and in turn, the business people of the capital would fund the school in order to get more business people in the future. The more the nobles invest in the school, the more they would be able to get out of it. Aria isn't too sure, remembering her past life how she longed to go to school, but could not as she was too busy trying to get food and survive day to day. Asher assures her that the school would have a working student scholarship, meaning that working students would get a salary. We love a king who loves education here. Aria thinks that he just wants to give the opportunity to give commoners school education, as Asher already has the funds needed to open his school, and Asher tries to convince the room, saying that the need for talent that isn't corrupted by money and greed isn't needed. The room agrees for the most part, and they continue the meeting, but Aria cannot concentrate due to Asher's presence. At the end of the meeting, Asher asks Aria to take a walk to discuss some things, and Aria agrees. They walk, and Aria is still thinking that Asher may be the secret child of the emperor. They arrive at a cabin in the forest near the capital, but Aria knows this is impossible due to how far those woods are. Asher brings Aria inside and begins to explain the truth about his ability. It passed down in his family, and the gift itself manifests in many forms. His personal gift is being able to travel to far places quickly, and Aria wonders if it is similar to her hourglass. She then asks if Asher is a part of the royal family, and Asher finally introduces himself as Asterope Franz, the crown prince of the royal family. Aria is mortified that she has been so rude to the crown prince for so long, but Asterope is having none of it. He asks her to lift her head and to not treat him as a stranger. He tells her that he will be in the capital for a while and that they can meet any time. He promises to send her a letter, and Aria goes back home, thinking about Asher and his business plan. She thinks about revealing herself as Investor A, but thinks that it would be strange as she has been manipulating the market under the pseudonym. Aria's mother interrupts Aria's thoughts, asking if she is ready for the engagement ceremony for Sarah. Mielle and her father are stunned, not realizing that Aria was so close to Sarah and the Marquess. As Aria tries to avoid them both, a letter arrives from the prince. He writes with the hope that she is doing well, and Aria is happy to receive the letter. Careful, Aria, you might develop a crush. Later, at the Marquess's engagement party, Sarah is happy to see Aria. Aria's father tries to gift her and the Marquess a very expensive sculpture, and Sarah accepts as she learns that Aria had a hand in the gift as well. Mielle asks for some lessons from Sarah, but Sarah isn't too sure, as her tone seems to be undermining Aria. After the greeting, the party starts to mingle more, and in the corner of her eye, Aria thinks that she sees Asher. She goes after what she saw until she reaches a garden, and she is startled by a jacket being put over her shoulders. It's Asher. Asher is happy to see Aria, but he wonders if it's all right for her to be outside, as she was being crowded by admirers only moments before. Aria asks if that bothered Asher, but it seems that our crown prince is confident in himself and how he feels for Aria. Good for him. They continue to talk, with Aria asking if he used his ability to arrive at the party this evening. He answers that he cannot use the power all the time, as it would drain him physically. Asher also explains that he was afraid that Aria would no longer meet with him if he continued to be dishonest, and that when he sees her, he cannot turn away. Uh-oh, Aria. What will you do? Asher gives Aria a kiss on the forehead and sends her back inside. But soon, there is a major problem. Lady Isis has just seen everything, and she is not happy at all. She asks why the prince is acting so improperly, especially when she has been promised all her life to be the next empress. Asher is not impressed at all. Get it? And hints that he knows that she was involved in the corruption of the casino at the capital. After the party, Lady Isis invites Mielle over. She tells Mielle that she needs to get rid of Aria, as she is bringing dishonor to the nobles in the capital. Mielle states that she understands, and she will do whatever it takes to get rid of Aria. Later, Aria notices her maid, Viri, acting very suspiciously. What could she be up to? While Aria is questioning Viri, Annie bursts in with another letter for Aria. The letter is from Pinot Noir, and he says that he will give credit to investor A for his hand in his business. Aria wonders if Asher has also suffered at the hands of nobles in his past life. While she thinks about her life and role with Asher, Jessie has Viri pour tea. Aria isn't very hungry, so Jessie opts to drink it herself. As she lifts the cup to her lips, Viri knocks it out of her hand. Jessie scolds Viri, but she soon collapses. Jessie has been poisoned by Viri. Aria uses her hourglass to reverse time, and this time, she pretends to drink the tea and collapse. The manor is in a flurry, and Aria's mother sends men after Viri. Aria is satisfied with all the pity she is receiving, and she also tells Mielle that perhaps Viri could have poisoned her, as Viri used to be Mielle's maid. The news of Aria's poisoning also reached a guest, so rumors are spreading everywhere outside the manor as well. Aria asks Jessie if she could tell who was involved in her poisoning and why they did it, and if Jessie could spread those reasons around as well. A few days later, Sarah comes to visit Aria out of concern for her. She tells Aria that she will always be on her side, and Sarah reminds her that there are people that love her. People are still talking about Aria's poisoning. Sarah is defending Aria left and right. The Marquess wants the search for Viri to be wrapped up quickly, and Jessie is telling people that Viri could not have acted alone. Aria tells two investigators to talk to Emma and Mielle, as Aria states that Emma is not fond of Aria due to her upbringing. As the investigations continue, Aria speaks with Jessie about if Emma really was behind the poisoning. While they talk, Aria notices fresh tulips. She asks Jessie if she has been replacing them every day, but Jessie tells her that they have been coming every day, fresh. Aria wonders if Asher has been bringing them himself every day, but before she can figure out what to do, Sir Kane comes in the door. He wishes Aria well and then leaves. But Aria notices that his gaze seems slimy. Ugh. Later, during a family meal, no one seems to understand why Kane has come back home so soon over what happened to Aria. Aria realizes that Kane might be falling a bit for her. Gross. She decides to use his feelings to make Cain destroy the family from the inside out. After the dinner, Mielle goes to see Isis in order to try to explain what went wrong. Emma goes with her, and she vows to try her best to find out what happened to Viri. Isis tells Emma and Mielle that someone must come forward and confess as the culprit before Viri says anything due to the pressure to find her. Mielle and Emma leave to find a scapegoat, and a letter arrives to Isis from the prince. What could he want? Aria has just found out that Mielle went to the Frederick house. She orders one of her men to keep a watch until she returns. Soon, Aria hears a carriage, but it is Cain. Cain still looks to be smitten with Aria, and Aria is still, rightfully, disgusted by her stepbrother. Aria drops her shawl over the balcony of her room, and Cain scoops it up to return it. Aria invites Cain for tea in order to play with his feelings and use him, and Cain accepts. As the two have tea, Aria notices Cain staring, and she teases him by saying that soon she will have to leave the family house. Cain protests at once, saying that he will take care of everything. Aria tells him that he is the only one she can trust, and this causes Cain to ramp up the search for Viri. Later that night, Aria works on figuring out who is sending her letters of request for investments from foreign countries. Tired, she goes to her balcony to get some air, and she sees Asher in the courtyard. The knights are looking around the perimeter, and for a moment, Aria worries that he will be caught. But Asher uses his ability to hide himself and Aria in Aria's room. Asher apologizes for appearing so suddenly, and he explains that he wanted to give her a bouquet of flowers. He asks if she is all right after her incident with the poison, and he confesses that he wants to be in a relationship with Aria. Aria realizes that she has feelings for Asher as well, but Asher interrupts her by saying that the person who poisoned her has been found as well. He hands Aria a letter, trusting what happens next in Aria's hands. The next day, Aria arrives to a small cabin, and in it, Viri is tied up and gagged. At first, Aria wanted to kill her, but she realizes that she has a beautiful opportunity. She tells Viri that in order to have her life spared, she must travel back to the Rosente home and tell everyone who the real culprit behind the poisoning was. If she does this, Aria assures her Viri will be able to escape to a foreign country with plenty of food and supplies. The next day, Viri shows up to the home, and the servants go up in a frenzy. Everyone gathers around to see Viri as the guards grab her, but Aria calms the crowd, saying that Viri has something to say. Viri tearfully admits to poisoning Aria, but claims that she didn't want to do so. She points her attention to Emma, Mielle's head maid, and says that Emma made her do the deed. The whole house is in shock, and Emma rushes to grab Viri and beat her. Aria looks on in glee, knowing that there will be even more trouble for the Rosente home. As Aria continues to watch Emma and Viri fight, Cain sees her laughing and mistakes it for her crying. He puts an arm around her to comfort her, saying that no one will harm her again. Sir Rosente keeps questioning Viri to make certain that Emma was truly the one who gave the poison to Viri to use on Aria. Aria puts on a show to beg for Viri's life, thus keeping her end of the bargain with Viri. Viri is banished to a foreign country, and she boards her carriage. That night, Viri's coachmen disappear, as does all her luggage. She steps out to look for them, and she hears rustling in the woods. Viri is ambushed and killed. In the following days, a message arrives to Aria saying that Viri has been disposed of. The day is also the day of Emma's trial, and Emma isn't looking too good. She is being accused of attempted murder, and Aria is asked if she has any reason as to if Emma should be pardoned. Aria claims that she wants no more victims, and so for that reason, Emma must pay for her wrongs. Emma is sentenced to death, and Mielle collapses in grief. As servants come to attend to Mielle, Aria kneels down to ask Mielle if she was the one who told Emma to carry out the deed. Mielle loses consciousness completely, but luckily, Rain is present at the trial. Rain offers to escort them to the nearest hospital, and Rain slips a note in Aria's hand before leaving, saying that someone is waiting to see her. As Aria walks outside the courtroom, she is followed by Cain. He says he is worried about her, even though his sister has been taken to the hospital. Gee. Aria tries to leave as she is supposed to meet the person waiting for her, but Kane won't leave her alone. Asher arrives and he and Kane face off. Aria wants to leave with Asher, but Kane is jealous and he refuses to let her leave with someone he doesn't know. Aria begs Kane to go back to Mielle, saying that she must speak to Sir Pinot Noir alone. Aria and Asher walk off, leaving Kane stunned. Asher asks Aria how she is, explaining that he waited for her outside the courtroom as the judge would have recognized his face. Aria is surprised that Asher can still view her so positively after she sent Emma to her death. But Asher tells her that he is willing to accept her just the way she is. The next day at the Rosente home, everyone is concerned because Mielle is refusing to come out of her room or eat. Her maids are feeling neglected, and they are complaining among themselves until Aria comes along. Aria invites them for tea and tells them to tell her how Mielle is doing as well. Over tea, the maids inform Aria that Mielle has taken a walk. They suspect that she must be in a better mood after receiving a letter from Lady Isis. Aria suspects that Isis spoke about Oscar in the letter, as reminding Mielle of her fiancé might have cheered her up. Aria wants to target Oscar in order to hurt Mielle, but the thought of Asher stops her, even though she tries to deny it. Meanwhile, Annie has another letter for Aria, but she is stopped by Kane. He tries to intercept the letter, but Annie says that it's from the Baron, protecting the letter and its contents. The letter asks for Investor A to be at the opening ceremony for Asher's new school, and Aria wonders if it's okay to reveal herself to be the investor. She is lost in thought all the way through dinner, and finally, Kane has had enough. He tells everyone at the table that the Pinot Noir family isn't a good fit for the Rosente family, and that Aria has been seeing the young lord of Pinot Noir. Mielle and Kane aren't having the best time. Mielle's most trusted maid has been executed, and Kane is finally realizing how gross crushing on his stepsister is. At least, we hope. Meanwhile, Aria is caught between her identity as Investor A and her duties as Aria Rosente, especially when it comes to Prince Asher. What will she do? Find out now. Kane's outburst stirs up the dinner table. He is convinced that Aria is too young to marry, but Aria's father thinks that it is time for Aria to start investing in her future as well. The Rosente family sends a message out to all the noble families in the area. Jessie asks if Aria would really marry a man her father picks, but Aria isn't worried about any of that right now. Meeting suitors would take up too much of her time, and our Aria doesn't have any time to waste. In all the commotion, Rain visits with flowers for Aria, a letter, and more flowers for Mielle. While her father and Kane accuse Rain of perhaps trying to woo Aria, Aria leaves to go read her letter. On her way to her private room, she passes Mielle. Something with Mielle is off. She doesn't say much, only whispering in Aria's ear about how Aria killed Emma before she leaves to go meet with Oscar. Aria settles in her room and reads her letter. It is from Asher, and he sent well wishes and a mysterious ring. What could he mean with it? Meanwhile, Mielle is all but hysterical at her meeting with Oscar. She doesn't understand why her father won't back up the aristocrats and Oscar's family against the prince, and she's worried that this could mean trouble for Oscar. Oscar assures her that Lady Isis's other plans are going accordingly, and that she should stop worrying so much. Mielle agrees, saying that with everything that had been going on, she had been emotionally unstable. Oscar flinches. Did she have something to do with the attempt on Aria's life? After all, she was in contact with Lady Isis after the poisoning attempt almost constantly. While Mielle and Oscar meet, Kane is still trailing after his younger stepsister. As Aria watches a group of nobles gather in her home, he sneaks behind her. She asks if she should be worried about the gathering and greet the guests, but Kane tells her not to worry. He instead tells her to learn a foreign language, and Aria is confused by his meaning. The next day, Aria's mother bursts into Aria's bedroom. She has news. Lady Isis is to marry the king of a foreign country. Aria's mother is concerned. This is an act of opposition to the crown in their country, and this could bring war. She wants to divorce the count, and Aria goes quiet. Perhaps her mother is right? Aria tells her mother that she is free to leave at any time and that she herself has work to do at the Resente estate. Aria's mother isn't going to leave her child alone, and so she promises to leave with Aria after her work is done. Later, Aria sends a letter as Investor A saying that she will participate in the completion ceremony of the academy. When a formal invitation comes, Aria invites her family formally. They turn her down, with Mielle smugly saying that it wouldn't be becoming of her family to be in attendance for the school's opening. Aria's mother is stunned, but Aria tells her not to worry, as she knows how the people under her and the prince will see her and want to support her in the coming days after the opening. The day of the opening, Aria stuns everyone in a beautiful dress. Her mother tags along with her, saying that she told the count that she hadn't been outside in a while. The Imperial Academy is beautiful, and soon, Aria, her mother, and her maids are greeted by Marquess Vincent and Sarah. Aria wonders if Asher will show up, and what persona he will show up under. Asher soon appears in the outfit of the Imperial family, and he welcomes all to the opening of the academy. He introduces himself as Asterope, the crowned prince. Prince Asterope invites Investor A to meet him on the podium in front of the academy, and he is shocked when Aria steps forward. She thanks him for inviting her to such an event, and she says a few words about the inspiration behind the school. When she finishes her speech, she turns to see Asher's reaction. Is he proud? Does he think that he's been deceived? Until the end of the ceremony, Aria can't even find Asher. He's nowhere to be seen. After the ceremony, Aria is worried about not seeing Asher. She cannot find him, and people soon swarm her, trying to see if the rumors about her terrible behavior were true. Asher comes up behind Aria as a group of men swarm her, saying that Aria has a prior engagement with him. The two of them have tea, and they discuss their secret identities. Aria didn't have a clue that Asher was Pinot Noir, and Asher didn't know that Aria was Investor A. Asher asks how Aria has been, as Investor A was an extremely busy man. Aria replies that she was a bit worried about Asher instead. Asher pokes fun at Aria for worrying about him, but he gets serious for a moment, explaining how precious her safety and his planning now is to him. He then turns the conversation to Lady Isis, remarking that she might be planning something. He asks Aria for a chance to propose, and Aria accepts. As they laugh and joke with each other, word has reached Lady Isis about Investor A. She sets out to make her next plot. But what could it be? Kane, Aria, her mother, and her father are having tea. Aria finally reveals that she is in fact seeing someone and that she would like to pay him his respects. She leaves everyone in the party flabbergasted. In the next scene, Aria is surrounded by noblemen who demand to know who her suitor is. She distracts them by sending them off to go get breakfast, leaving her alone with her father. Her father asks if any other proposals are good, and she lies, knowing that she will need the noblemen on her side. She offers all the men tuition money to go to study at the academy, and they gratefully agree. As the men leave to go, Aria's father pulls her aside and whispers in her ear, "The rumors are true? His daughter is Investor A?" Aria confirms that she is, and her father is delighted. Kane is concerned, focusing on the fact that Aria knows the crown prince. He asks when she met him. She responds by telling Kane that she met the prince when she was 14, and that she didn't know that the prince was truly the prince. Aria leaves to discuss proposals, and she converses with Jessie about the rumors of her being Investor A. Jessie gives her a paper, telling her that the paperboy, Hans, received a scholarship and is attending the academy. Aria is glad that Hans gets to live happily this time, and she reads the paper. Public opinion has turned on Mielle. As she reads, she realizes that Mielle and Isis will be attempting to get her, but she is ready. That night, Aria opens a letter from Asher. He tells her that he will set a date for a visit, and he has also sent a small bracelet. Meanwhile, at Lady Isis's home, Mielle is assuring Isis that Aria will not be accepted into high society. Isis wants to know if the prince has actually visited the Resente estate, and Mielle tells her no. Isis decides to hasten Mielle's wedding in order to make the ties between the Resente family and aristocrats. As they plan, Jessie gushes about Hans, while Aria listens. She wishes that Jessie would like someone better, and she plans to whip Hans into shape. She sends Jesse away and lights a candle, walking to the balcony. In a whirl of wind, he is there. Asher has come to visit. Asher is back. He visits with Aria, and Aria notices his tan, and he explains that he was in warmer regions. As the two discuss, Asher notices the bracelet that he sent is on Aria's wrist. She in turn notices that he is wearing a ring that looks suspiciously like a ring he sent her previously. He confirms that it is the same ring, and explains that it changes color. According to Asher, it is a family heirloom, and the magic in it is inherent. It changes color as he uses his ability, and Asher explains that he has also given her the matching ring. Aria is awkward, not knowing how to respond to such a gift. Aria brings up Sarah, and she tells Asher that she wants Sarah as an etiquette teacher at the academy. Asher thinks it's a great idea, but such a move would stir up the centrist party, which Sarah's husband, the Marquess Vincent, is a part of. Aria mentions that if Investor A and their followers were on the prince's side, the opinion would change in his favor. This reminds Prince Asher that a judge would like to meet Aria. She is a member of the imperial family, a single woman, and is not looking for any power. Aria agrees to meet the judge. A few days later, a letter arrives at the Resente estate, announcing that the prince is coming to visit. The estate is in an uproar, with maids cleaning and everyone trying to get ready for the visit. Mielle confronts Aria, asking if Aria truly believes that she is going to marry the prince. Aria responds that she would be a better match than someone who is planning on fleeing the country. Mielle defends Lady Isis, and after a tense standoff between the two girls, Mielle stalks off. The prince has arrived to the Resente estate, and Aria introduces her family to the prince, much to the family's discomfort. Over dinner, the prince and Mr. Resente discuss business and family matters. During the dinner, Aria makes sure to press Mielle's buttons, but Cain wants to know if the prince truly came to ask permission to marry Aria. Prince Asterope says yes, and he then asks Aria's parents for permission to marry their daughter. Both agree, and Aria and the prince take a walk off in the garden, not knowing that Mielle's gaze was following them. Mielle, are you about to lose it? Asher and Aria are walking through the gardens, and Asher is interested in her life and how she grew up. Aria doesn't really consider her past life great, but she is content to let him have his moment. Asher brings up the proposal, asking if he did enough. Aria assures him that he did, but soon realizes that Asher wants praise from Aria, not just a simple confirmation. So cute, Asher. In the following days, Aria receives a letter from Frey, the judge who presided over Aria's case. Aria visits Frey with Annie, and Frey invites Aria for tea excitedly. What could she want with Aria? Throughout the tea service, Aria is surprised that Frey is treating her so well. She wonders if it's a trap, or perhaps Frey sees Aria as a working woman just like herself. Lady Frey asks Aria all about herself, asking about her favorite things. Lady Frey gets excited, but Aria has no clue what for. Frey asks her if Aria is turning 17 soon, and when Aria responds that she will be turning 17 on her birthday, Frey tells Aria to put on an outfit for her. The outfit is a man's, and Aria is confused. Lady Frey cries when she sees Aria, saying it's as if the child has returned. And Aria can't take it anymore. What is this all about? Aria tells Lady Frey that she has another engagement to get to, and so Lady Frey gives her a box of tea before Aria goes. Before Aria turns to go, Lady Frey asks if her mother, the Countess, said anything to her before she arrived. Once in the carriage, Aria decides to go straight home, not really having anything to do that day. Later that night, Aria almost remembers something, but her thoughts are interrupted by Cain. He still isn't happy that Aria is getting married to the prince, but the Count has settled the matter with other households, so the marriage is on. He and Cain stand off, but Mielle is quick to back up her father, saying that he is the head of the household. At her words, Cain remembers a conversation with Mielle that he had. She was just as against the marriage as he was, but it seems that Mielle has a plan that Cain has to adhere to, so for now, he stays silent. Aria notices Cain's new silence, and she thinks about the possibility of a trap as she walks to her room. She is surprised to find Asher in her room. Asher is here to visit, and Aria realizes that she forgot about his visit today. Asher looks like a kicked puppy at being forgotten, but Aria assures him that it was nothing personal. Aria recounts her day, telling Asher about her encounter with Lady Frey. Asher knows the exact reason for her strange behavior. Lady Frey had a brother who was kicked out of the palace. Aria has a resemblance to the lost relative. Aria can't believe her ears. She resembles Lady Frey's brother? Asher confirms that they are very alike, with their features and hair color being very similar. Asher offers to find a portrait of the lost brother so that Aria can see what he looks like. Later, after Asher leaves, Annie brings news about Mielle. Apparently, another maid saw that Lady Isis is writing to Mielle, and that on the last letter Mielle received, Mielle looked extremely happy. However, the maid couldn't read, so they have no clue what the letter said. In the past, Aria recalls Mielle always wrote to Lady Isis before starting trouble, so this could be bad news. Annie reassures Aria that everyone is on her side, and Aria believes that she must be cautious, letting Mielle start things first, rather than striking her preemptively. The next day, Aria is going to the academy, but she notices that there's a giant party outside. She doesn't want to go, but Annie insists, as it is time to hand out scholarships at the academy. Aria understands this, but what could Mielle be doing with such a huge tea party outside? As Aria goes to leave, Mielle stops her, asking where she could be going. Aria answers rudely, causing Mielle's friends to crowd her. Once in the carriage, Aria is uneasy. Mielle has unsettled her, and she knows that her sister is up to something. Once at the scholarship ceremony, Aria and Annie are greeted by Sarah and Baron Burboom. Sarah has written a reply to Aria's request of her being a teacher, and she wanted to give it to Aria in person. Sarah accepts becoming a teacher, much to the glee of Aria. The two women are taken to a private seating box, and the two discuss Marquess Vincent. Sarah tells Aria that the Marquess is highly favorable to Aria, but Aria is a little concerned, knowing that he did not choose a side up until this point. Recently, however, other centrists had to speak to Vincent and Lady Sarah's father, so now Aria has more backing and confidence. During the ceremony, Hans's name is called, but Aria assures him that she is paying for his education in order to do right by Jessie. After the ceremony, Aria makes note of the badges that the academy students were wearing, and how similar they look to the brooch she gave Annie. Annie knows all about these badges. They are a symbol of loyalty to Aria, and everyone is wearing them in support. Annie herself made them. Back at the Rosente estate, Mielle's party is still going on. Mielle's friends are poking fun at Aria, but soon she's in the safety of her room. Out of her window, she sees Mielle greet her father on the grounds below. Aria thinks that perhaps she's being paranoid, and she sits to rest. But her calm is soon interrupted by a knock at the door. It is Mielle. She is standing with her father, and Mielle says that the three of them need to talk. As they draw close to Mielle, she pushes her father down the stairs. As Count Rosente falls, his grasp comes into contact with Aria's bracelet, ripping it off as he continues to tumble down the stairs. Aria watches in horror as Mielle screams, and Mielle starts yelling that Aria has pushed Count Rosente down the stairs. She needs to get her hourglass, but she cannot get it in her box. There's a flash above her. Asher has appeared to save the day. He actually just grabs Aria and vanishes, leaving Mielle at the scene of the crime. The servants arrive, and they crowd Mielle and call for a doctor for the Count. Meanwhile, someone is calling Aria's name. She opens her eyes, and Aria is in a villa with Prince Asher. Asher tells her that she fell unconscious while he was bringing her to the villa, and Aria looks frantically for her hourglass, relieved when she found it. She needs to get back into the past, before the Count fell down the stairs, but Aria realizes that she forgot her pocket watch, so she would have no idea of knowing how much time has passed. Unable to go into the past, she asks how Asher even knew she was in trouble in the first place. It turns out, Asher has a few tricks up his sleeve. The bracelet that he gave Aria was enchanted by him, and when it broke, the bracelet alerted Asher that Aria might be in trouble. Aria realizes that no matter how she went into the past, Mielle would have had a way to pin the Count's fall on her. Aria thanks Asher for coming to her rescue, and the two have tea. Aria explains her whole situation with Mielle to Asher, recounting how Mielle pushed Count Resente down the stairs. Asher is appalled, saying that he tried to stay away from the Resente family because they were Aria's family. Aria replies that her only family is her mother, and so Asher vows to do what he can to help her exact her revenge on the family. Aria questions him, saying that everyone is probably already blaming Aria. Asher responds by saying that he and she will take a trip, and starting from that point, as far as anyone knows, they are on a secret vacation with each other. Back at the house, Mielle is telling everyone that Aria pushed Count Resente down the stairs. The maids aren't too sure about her story, but Mielle's friends are quick to try to back her up. They say that Aria's bracelet was on the stairs, and they try to comfort Mielle by saying that the Count's heart is still beating. Mielle cannot have the Count regain consciousness, and she wonders where Aria could be. Well, Mielle, Aria is in a tavern with Asher. They are greeted by the Viscount, who wonders what the two could be doing at his establishment. Aria and Asher are there to lodge for the night. Aria and Asher are making themselves comfortable, but soon the cozy air is ruined. Asher has just received word that Aria is a wanted criminal. The next day, Aria and Asher leave their lodging, and a few hours later, men arrive with news to the Viscount. They tell him that Aria, the woman he just housed for the night, is wanted for attempted murder. Aria and Asher make their escape secretly through the woods, and Asher uses his power halfway through the ride to teleport himself and Aria to outside. Asher takes Aria on a stroll through the streets of town in cloaks, both enjoying having a stroll without being supervised. They see the sights of the town and they enjoy each other's company. Aria opens up about her past to Asher, and she recounts a story from her younger years. She remembers that once as a child, another child invited her to eat. The mystery child was none other than Asher himself. Maybe these two were meant to be from the beginning? As Asher and Aria are continuing to walk through the crowd, Aria reminisces on another childhood memory. She remembers getting food with Asher, but she doesn't understand how far their connection truly runs. Suddenly, a cry is heard through the streets. A man rushes by, with a crowd forming around another man who is lying on the ground injured. Aria deduces that it must be a pickpocketing, and she reverses time with her hourglass in order to shove the victim and distract the crowd, stopping the crime. Asher notices right away that something has happened, and he notices that her ring is glowing as if she used magic. He thinks that the glowing of the ring shouldn't be gone so quickly, but he brushes away his curiosity and nervousness by saying that he is actually tired and ill from using his magic powers so much. The next day, Asher has a confession to make to Aria. He shows her that he has been inspecting her hourglass, and while she is happy that Asher came clean, Aria wants to keep a closer eye on Asher. The carriage ride is a bit awkward, but soon the pair come to the border of the kingdom. There is a large crowd waiting for them, and the Croa kingdom welcomes Asher and Aria with open arms. Asher and Aria part ways for a moment as Asher is needed on some business. He promises Aria a very nice dinner on his return. What a nice date! Soon after Asher leaves, a knock at the door draws Aria's attention. Someone is looking for Asher, and Aria wonders if the person is the one who Asher is supposed to be meeting. The person introduces themselves as Nara from behind the door, and he tells Aria that they will meet again before leaving. Aria is so freaked out by the encounter that she is thinking about it well into her dinner with Asher. The dinner goes pretty smoothly for the most part, though, until they are interrupted by a handsome newcomer, Rohan. Rohan scolds Asher for not visiting him as soon as he arrived in Croa. Who is this man? Rohan does his best to annoy Asher, and Aria doesn't know how to react. She watches as the two men go back and forth, and then she is disgusted as Rohan kisses the back of her hand and waltzes away. As the two finish their dinners, things at the Resente estate aren't looking so good. It doesn't look like Count Resente is going to wake up anytime soon, and Mielle and Cain go to discuss their next move. Cain doesn't like the fact that Aria is taking all the blame for the incident, but Mielle doesn't want to hear anything from him. Mielle tells him to follow her plan, or else he can kiss his current position goodbye. As Mielle thinks about her beautiful life that she could have in the future after all things current had passed, news arrives at the Resente home. Aria has been found, and she is claiming that she has been on vacation this entire time. When they come face to face, Aria and Mielle both try to one-up each other and make the other look guilty for their father's fate. Aria claims that she was worried her father would call her on her vacation, and so she came back sooner than expected. Asher backs her up, saying that Aria would never hurt a fly. Mielle and Kane are adamant about proving that Aria did it, so Asher decides to clear everything up at court. In the courthouse, everyone is tense. Mielle calls her ladies, Wendy and Madi, to be witnesses along with her, and they all claim to have seen Aria push Count Resente down the stairs. Aria challenges the ladies, asking them to recall exactly when they saw her. To further back up Aria's claim, Prince Asher pulls up credit transactions detailing when and where he and Aria were, proving that she couldn't have done the crime as she wasn't in the right place. The court wants time to examine the documents, and Mielle is furious that once again, she has been thwarted by Aria. Desperate, Mielle pulls out Aria's broken bracelet. Will that be the smoking gun that puts Aria in jail? Or worse? Everyone in the courtroom is stunned by the new evidence, but Aria denies that it is her bracelet. Aria shows everyone that the real bracelet is on her wrist, and she proves it by showing off a shining bracelet resting on her arm. Mielle accuses Aria of that bracelet being fake, and Asher asks if this means Mielle believes him to be a liar as well. He also asks her to prove that the bracelet on Aria is fake, and Mielle can't do this. Aria asks what she would have to gain from the Count's death, and this makes everyone in the courtroom realize that the person who would gain the most from the Count dying is Mielle. Everyone is turning on Mielle, and Mielle herself feels backed into a corner. What will she do? Things aren't looking good for Mielle. Her ladies have turned on her, and Kane has as well. She's desperate, and so Mielle tells everyone about how the prince suddenly appeared and disappeared after the crime had been conducted. Prince Asher asks for a mental health check for the witness, and after all this gaslighting, Mielle might just need it. Aria even suggests that perhaps Mielle and her friends were under the influence of a new illusion-inducing drug. The crowd seems to buy this story, and Mielle's friends scramble to come up with a solution. They say that they also saw a woman with long blonde hair leaving the scene, but the room realizes what was just said. Mielle also has long blonde hair, of course. The judge calls for a temporary break as all eyes are on Mielle. During the break, Aria is greeted by Sarah, her maids, and her mother, and they all congratulate Aria for being so calm. Mielle, on the other hand, isn't doing so well. She has collapsed, and Kane carries her to the hospital while Aria and her loved ones go back home. Once home, Aria looks at her father, who is still unconscious. She wonders who he will choose when he wakes up. Will he tell the truth about Mielle, or use Aria as a cover-up? The next day, Aria arrives back at court with Asher. Everyone takes it as a good sign to trust in her, but Kane and Mielle are less than pleased. Asher and Aria decide to make a good show in fixing each other's clothes and collars, but Asher soon complains that Aria is too close to him once the moment passes. Looks like our Prince Charming is a little flustered. The judge calls the court to order, and she declares Aria innocent. Also, due to the evidence, Mielle is found to be a suspect. She is arrested, and Aria decides to return home, even though Asher is nervous about her returning without him. As Aria and Asher continue to flirt and worry for each other, Kane is yelling at the family lawyer. It doesn't look like Mielle is getting any time off her sentence, and since she might flee, Mielle cannot go on bail. Kane goes to visit his baby sister, and Mielle is freaking out. She worries that Oscar will want nothing to do with her, and Mielle begs Kane to testify for her. Kane isn't so sure, and instead focuses on trying to find another way to bail Mielle out. As Kane is at home trying to figure out where to get enough money for Mielle's freedom, Aria's mother rushes out of the Count's room. Count Resente is awake. Aria is getting new power as Investor A and as a noble in high society, but others around her want that power for themselves. With the Count being injured in an attempted murder plot by Mielle, will Aria take the fall for her sister? Or will she find a new way to come out on top? Find out now. Count Recente is awake. There's just one problem. He cannot speak. With Kane, he sets up a way to communicate with the household members. He blinks once for yes and twice for no to answer questions. The system works so well that Count Recente almost reveals who it was that pushed him. That is, until Aria's mother comes in to check on her husband. News of the Count waking up reaches Aria, and she takes the time to discuss what it all means with her mother. The Count is paraplegic now, so his life will be difficult from here on out, and he will be unable to go back to work. That means that Kane will be the new Count of the Recente home soon. This worries Karen, since her marriage to the Count meant that as long as she didn't step out of line with him, she and Aria could live comfortably. As Kane doesn't particularly care for Karen, she is afraid that she and Aria could lose their position in the family. While Aria and her mother continue to discuss possibilities for the future, Mielle's sentencing is being reduced from 20 years in prison to 5 years of house arrest. Sounds pretty lenient for attempted murder, but I guess that's what being rich gets you. The judge tells Mielle that the Count has also identified her as the one who pushed him. So things are looking swell for Mielle. As Mielle is led to her rooms for house arrest, she and Kane are seething. They cannot believe that their father would favor Karen and Aria over them. What will they do for their revenge? Kane is trying his best to run the family in the absence of his father, but Aria can tell he isn't doing such a good job. One day, she stops Kane and asks about Mielle, claiming that she can hear her sister yell and throw things in her room. Aria asks Kane if it is a side effect of the hallucinogens the public thinks Mielle took at the party, but Kane denies that Mielle ever did any drugs at all. The issue is a hot topic because Prince Asher himself arrives with his Imperial investigators to interrogate Mielle about the drugs. As they drag Mielle from her room, she spots Aria and makes a scene. She yells about how Aria has no place in the Recente family, and Aria slaps Mielle in front of everyone, telling her to calm down and act like a noble. The prince sees this and thinks that Aria shouldn't have to dirty her hands with Mielle at all, and so he sets to drive Mielle further down her path to ruin. As he interrogates her, Prince Asher makes Mielle believe that he believes her. He asks for her account, and she tells him about how she saw him and Aria disappear into thin air. Since she really believes herself, the investigators cannot outrule hallucinogens, and they deem Mielle as unable to tell the difference between reality and hallucinations. As the investigation wraps up, a letter from Lady Isis comes for Mielle. She says that she would never abandon Mielle since there is evidence of them working together since Aria's poisoning. But Isis does not have Mielle's best interests at heart. She wants to kill Mielle. Mielle is planning on meeting Isis. Isis is fleeing to Croa to stage a coup, and Mielle wants the protection that comes from being under the influence of Isis. She also wants to tell Isis about Prince Asher's powers. Isis sends a maid to Mielle's room. She and Mielle trade places, with Mielle walking out to a carriage dressed as the maid. Mielle arrives to another carriage carrying Isis, and the two discuss Isis's marriage to the royalty in Croa. Isis casually asks if Mielle has the letters that the two exchanged, but Mielle has left them with her brother back home. Mielle goes on to explain how what she said at the trial was true, and that the prince does in fact have magic at his disposal. Isis considers her for a moment, but she tells Mielle that if she continues to speak about the subject with no proof, she will be considered as on drugs again by others. The two travel to Croa and meet the emperor, Croa Lohen. Isis passes Mielle off as a maid named Elle, and Lohen comments on how similar Mielle looks to a woman he heard about, who is Aria. Mielle takes Lohen's good nature as a sign that he will listen to her, so she tries to tell her about Prince Asher's power, but she is silenced by Isis. Isis reminds Mielle that she's a maid, and Mielle decides to get protection from Lohen instead of Isis, as Isis no longer trusts her. Mielle has decided to take matters into her own hands. She goes to Lohen's private chambers one evening, and she recounts her tale to the emperor. She tells him that on the night of the Count's accident, she saw Aria and Prince Asher disappear into mid-air. She tells Lohen that the prince's power is to disappear and reappear at will, and that Lady Mielle was wrongly accused. Lohen asks Vika, a man who was listening in, and Vika agrees to assume that the prince does have this ability. Lowen invites Mielle to lunch, and Isis and Vika come along as well. They all discuss the national marriage and upcoming plan to capture the capital of Asher's empire. Lowen only wants a national marriage if the capture of the capital is assured, but they are all interrupted by Marquess Piast, who has come to visit. Piast has provided the resources needed to capture the capital. He goes with Lowen to welcome the soldiers, saying that he has something important to find in the empire. What could it be? Meanwhile, Aria and Asher have discovered that Mielle has escaped. How will they handle it? Asher knows all about how Isis plans to have soldiers shuttled into the empire, disguised as commoners. Those soldiers will be split into the House of Nobles, who will then fight when the day they try to overthrow the capital comes. Cain intends to welcome some of those nobles into the Resente home. Aria fears that war is close, but Asher assures her not to worry. During a meal, the family discusses Mielle's disappearance to Croatia. The talk upsets Cain, who leaves to get ready for a welcoming party to introduce him as patriarch of the family to society. Aria makes sure to tell the guests, who she believes are the soldiers Asher described, that she and her mother do not own the mansion, and in fact, Cain is the owner of the property. Aria tells the men to party to their heart's content, and the men soon make a mess of the property. Aria tells the maids to spend money to fix everything the men break, and soon, the mansion's money trickles down the drain. As Aria ruins the Resentes financially, Vika and Piast are in a carriage looking for someone. Whoever they were not in the brothel in the capital, and Piast is losing hope. They are looking for a woman who gave birth after being banished from the empire. Chloe, the woman's lover, has been looking for the woman, but to no avail. Piast is Chloe's father, and he is looking for his child or grandchild to pass down his title as Marquess. Their search leads them to the Resente home, and Piast confirms that Karen is the woman that Chloe was looking for. Count Resente and Karen welcome Vika and Piast. They invite the two men to dinner, and there they meet Aria. Piast thinks that Aria looks exactly like his son, Chloe, while Aria chats with Vika. Vika introduces Piast to Aria, and Aria is suspicious of him, knowing he would not show up for no reason. That night, Annie brings a special delivery to Prince Asterope. The package is none other than Piast himself. The two men discuss the fact that Aria might be Chloe's daughter, with Piast explaining that tragedy had made Chloe visit Apple, the name Aria's mother was using at the time at the brothel. Piast wants to bring Aria back home with him to Croa, in order to make her a matriarch of the Marquess family. Asher is having none of it. He thinks that Aria should have a say in the matter, and the next day he asks her what she would do if her father suddenly appeared. Aria says that no matter what, she wouldn't leave to go with her father because he wasn't with her in her first life, facing all the difficulties of her life with her. Having heard Aria's answer, Piast makes a move to go home, but first, Asher asks him to tell Karen the truth. Asher and Piast sit Karen down for tea. Piast introduces himself as Chloe's father, instantly sending Karen into her memories of her time when she went by the name Apple. She denies knowing Chloe, and Piast explains that he is not threatening her with the information, but informing her of the truth. Aria is Chloe's daughter. Asher explains that Chloe has been looking for Karen for the past 17 years, and that Piast's job was to find her and bring her back to Croa. Karen is stunned that her Aria would have the blood of an aristocrat, and she asks Piast how he would know for sure. Piast responds by saying that Aria looks too much like Chloe for it to be coincidence. Asher, however, knows another way to tell. That night, he invites Aria out for a walk. They go to the lotus pond, and Asher explains how those who visit the pond are holy. Those who touch it are blessed with luckiness and good fortune. She goes to touch it, and Asher is amazed. Those with royal blood aren't rejected from the pond, so the fact that Aria could actually touch the water means that Chloe's blood runs through her. Asher doesn't tell Aria this, as he wants to tell the others first. For now, he brings her back home and lets her ponder what he meant. Aria connects that perhaps the powers of the royal bloodline and of Asher are connected to her ring, and she connects the powers of the ring to the powers that she has with her hourglass. But what is the connection exactly, Aria? It is almost Aria's birthday, and Aria is in charge of planning. As part of her grand scheme to ruin the Recentes, Aria is planning on making the birthday party extravagant, to the point of draining a substantial amount of the family money that has already dwindled fast. At the party, those from the Royal Academy School visit, and Jessie has already set out the gifts and candies Aria has bought for them. As the students enjoy the candy, an uninvited man scoffs at them, accusing Aria of pretending to be royal. Aria doesn't know the man, and she asks why he is there. The man is Kane's guest, and Aria tells him off for being rude to her guests at her own party. Aria says that Kane's guest must go to where Kane is for the party. As such, the man tries to go inside, but Aria stops him, saying that her guests are inside as well. She then reveals that Kane is not present at the manor, and she directs the man and his guests to the carriages to take them home. Aria's whole party sees her interaction with the rude man, and they cheer her on. Everyone, including Sarah. Sarah gives Aria a gift and tells her that the next time she meets Aria, it will be at Sarah's wedding. She gives Aria a warm goodbye and leaves. As she watches Sarah go, Annie wonders aloud where Asher is, causing Aria to fall into a sour mood. Aria knows that Asher is busy, but it would be nice to see him on her birthday. However, Asher is actually here. He's just a little late because he couldn't decide what to get Aria for her birthday, so he ended up bringing everything, causing him to have to bring more than one carriage. Aria is relieved to see him, and she also wants to talk to him privately. But what about? Aria has Asher alone, and she figures it's time to tell him about the hourglass. She tells him that her ability is somewhat similar to his, confessing that she can turn back time for 5 minutes a day. Asher admits that first he thought that her sleepiness from using her ability was because she had no royal blood at all. Aria insists that she doesn't, and Asher deduces that Karen hasn't told Aria about her heritage from Chloe yet. Asher asks what Aria regrets so much that she has to reverse time, because he has a theory. He thinks that the ability shows itself differently to different people, becoming what the user needed most in the time it manifested. Aria realizes that in her old life, at her last moments, she didn't want Mielle and her family to survive for what they had done to her. She doesn't tell Asher this, but Asher guesses that it must be a person Aria is after, and he is ready to draw his sword at Aria's word. Aria tells him to put his sword away, and continues explaining that because she has used the hourglass so much, she might be as much as 10 years older than Asher. Aria explains that without the hourglass, she is nothing, but Asher disagrees. He doesn't think that anyone could have used the hourglass as wisely as she has done. Aria is thankful that Asher continues to see her in a positive light, and Asher asks her to tell the reason why she had to come back in time in the first place. As Aria explains her previous life, Mielle and Lowen are having a meeting with Lady Isis. Lowen has brought extra money for Isis to support her coup plans, and Isis couldn't be more thankful. He also confirms that in his letter to her, he did write that he would marry her nationally before the coup was to happen. He orders her to capture the capital the next day. As Isis tries to make sense of the request, a carriage pulls up and opens to reveal Chloe. Isis and Oscar are stunned. He looks exactly like Aria. Isis corners Mielle, demanding to know who Chloe is and why he looks so much like Aria. Mielle isn't too worried, as she is caught up in how powerful Lowen is, and will be once he takes over the castle. She gets ready for dinner with him, leaving Isis with her brother Oscar. Oscar thinks that Lowen's eagerness to capture the capital so suddenly without proper preparation is odd, but Isis is at a loss on what to do. There is no way she or anyone else on her side can ask Prince Asher for help, as they are staging a rebellion against him. Lowen winning the rebellion is the only way Isis can guarantee her family's survival in aristocratic society. Oscar and Isis split up, with Isis's decision to support Lowen. Meanwhile, Aria, about to have tea with Prince Asher, is stopped by her mother. Karen asks Aria what she knows or would think if she had a father. Aria doesn't really care about her birth father, but as her mother is the second person to bring it up, Aria asks if someone has come forward as her real father. Karen denies this, and Annie arrives just in time to break up the awkward conversation, as the prince has arrived. Asher and Aria ride to their dinner date, and things get a little heated in the backseat of the carriage. But but they arrive at their destination before anything improper can happen. Once they step inside, they are surprised to find Lowen and Isis sitting at a table. Lowen invites them to sit and dine with him and Isis. Asher is bothered by Lowen dropping in on his date with Aria, but Aria decides to sit with him and Isis, claiming that it had been a while since they had all sat together. Through conversation, Aria discovers that Lowen is the Prince of Kroa. Isis says that perhaps Lowen and Asher know each other, and she's right, but their relationship seems as though it could be a little better. Isis doesn't know why Lowen has chosen to relax and dine before the day of their battle, and Lowen seems to be more interested in Aria than any battle plans or thoughts of capturing the capital. He flirts with Aria, but she turns him down in favor of Asher. Asher and Aria get up to leave, and Lowen seems disappointed, much to Isis's confusion. Meanwhile, as Asher and Aria leave, Asher tells her that he is a jealous man and that he doesn't like it when other men have her attention or take it away. He goes on to explain about the battle at the Imperial Palace, but Aria interrupts him. Aria assures Asher that she is interested in him only, and finally, after 81 long chapters, they kiss. It looks like we made it, guys. Nothing can go wrong now. Asher kisses Aria goodnight in front of her maids before his carriage leaves the Rosente estate, as he has just dropped her off for the night. The next day, the news of the kiss reaches Cain, who is less than happy that the stepsister he has been lusting after has the attention of another man. He yells at Aria, calling her improper for being with Asher so late in the evening, and the yelling even gets Karen's attention. Cain makes an even bigger scene, with maids and servants starting to gather as he yells at Karen to get her daughter under control. He tells Jessie and Annie to lock Aria up so that she would behave, and Karen slaps him, angry that he is causing all this fuss over Aria doing something as innocent as having a dinner date. Cain orders the servants gathered around him to carry Karen out of the estate, but no one moves to do so. However, the servants do move to let the Imperial guards into the room, who have just come into the Rosente home. Cain is shocked when they arrest him for treason. Meanwhile, Isis and Mielle are traveling with Lowen to the capital. Mielle and Isis are excited for the coup, but Isis feels that the steps leading up to the battle were too easy. She notes that the road is quiet, and it feels as though death is getting closer. And wouldn't you know it? She is right. Lowen has ridden to the capital with Isis and Mielle, who are forcibly grabbed out of the carriage. He watches as they are dragged to the town square where Asher, Aria, and a guillotine awaits. Asher makes an announcement. Everyone captured at the square is a traitor, as they have sold their properties and tried to make ties to go against the Imperial Palace. Lowen and Vika reveal that the entire plot to capture the capital was fake from the beginning, and that Asher was in on it from the start. Aria is happy to know that Isis and Mielle are out of the way, being taken as prisoners, but she still can't quite figure Lowen out. However, as Mielle is being dragged away, Aria stops thinking about Lowen, turning her attention back on her sister. She asks Asher to be lenient with Mielle if at all possible, cementing her role as the merciful sister as opposed to Mielle being the ruthless one. Aria offers to have Mielle under her care at all times in exchange for the punishment Mielle would receive. Something tells me, though, that Mielle would probably just accept the punishment. Asher decides that if Mielle's part of the treason plot was small, she can go to Aria instead of having a more dire punishment. As Mielle is taken away, Asher asks Aria why she asked for a lighter sentence for her sister. Aria explains that she wants the revenge all to herself, and Asher accepts her reasoning pretty quickly. Aria asks Asher what deal he made with Lowen that Lowen mentioned so casually, and Asher explained that if Lowen helped him squash the rebellion, there would be peace between Croatia and his empire for at least 50 years. Seems like a pretty sweet deal to me. It also seems that Lowen got to help himself to some jewels and gold from all the nobles on his end of the bargain as well. Meanwhile, the nobles are being interrogated for their role in the plot. It looks like Oscar did some intel during the whole plot, and he gave up his role to let Isis go down by herself, as he didn't want anyone else hurt by his sister. The prince is informed of this, but whatever it may mean, it's too late. It might be time for heads to roll. Aria goes to visit Mielle, leaving Isis to seethe in her cell about her failed plot alone. Over tea, Aria manipulates Mielle, telling her that she has been used by Emma and Lady Isis to try to harm Aria. Aria tells Mielle that this isn't her fault and that she is just a child, and that all Mielle wants to do is marry and be happy with the person she loves. Aria assures Mielle that she will guide her little sister on the right path, and Mielle accepts her sister's help gratefully. Meanwhile, Cain thinks that Aria will save him as well, as he has received a letter from her stating that she has brought him a wonderful lawyer. As he plans his escape, Karen has her divorce from Count Recente finalized, and the Count is sent to a sanatorium. How many more things can happen in Aria's world? The plot to overthrow the Empire has thrown the aristocratic families into disarray. Meanwhile, peace has finally arrived at the Recente estate, and their servants are very grateful to be on the right side of the chaos. Annie and Jessie praise her and her mother for treating their staff so well at a time when many maids are being sacked without a cent for pension. They're all dressing very simply since Aria and her mother are on their way to witness the punishment of the traitors. To their surprise, Rohan has stuck around to watch, and he's even brought a friend. The man beside the king is none other than Chloe, Aria's father. Of course, she doesn't know that yet, but who wouldn't be a little suspicious given how similar they look? Seriously, they're practically identical. Then Asher appears, interrupting a very intense family reunion. Suddenly, everyone is making excuses. It's clear to Aria what has happened, and even more obvious that all these people were keeping the secret from her. However, our Aria is not the type to get over-emotional. To be honest, I would probably lose my chill and start screaming, but Aria is business first as usual. Asher gently suggests she head home, since executions aren't exactly a casual affair. But Aria has worked incredibly hard to back her enemies in a corner. She wants to see this through to the end. Cain and Mielle are brought out first, and Isis soon follows to the tune of the public's angry insults. She hasn't lost any of her fighting spirit. Even when a commoner tries to push her from behind, she glares at him and mutters under her breath about Aria not deserving to look down at her from such a position. Rohan orders her to be brought before him, not wanting to miss an opportunity to infuriate his previous partner in crime. He makes Isis look closely between Chloe and Aria, and the realization hits her instantly. Since Isis has always had so many horrible comments about Aria's mother and background, he wanted her to die knowing that in truth, she has not only noble blood, but royal blood too. But he also points out that Isis has some royal blood as well. Perhaps that means she has some unique ability like Asher. One she hasn't yet discovered? The criminals line up before the guillotine, waiting for their sentences to be announced. Some of the nobles were promised to have their crimes forgiven if they cooperated, but once the punishments are listed, it becomes pretty obvious that that was all a lie designed to make the criminals turn each other in. Next up is Mielle. For her age and level of participation, she is sentenced to 50 years in jail. Mielle starts to lose her cool, but then it's announced that her sentence will be delayed under observation for the time being. Basically, it means that she can live at home so long as she does what Aria says. For Mielle, it feels like her prayers have come true. Little does she realize that her sister has a whole nother kind of punishment in mind. For Cain, there is no mercy, only a death sentence. At least, that's what it was originally. Considering his cooperation, they settled on imprisonment for life. His sentence will also be suspended, and he will work as a servant in the palace for the rest of his life. Cain doesn't seem very happy with the news, but considering his life was on the line a minute ago, he should really be jumping for joy like his sister. Especially since everyone else in line receives a death sentence, including Lady Isis. In fact, Asher publicly announces that due to her leading role in the coup, he intends to hang her head at the gates for 1 month so that everyone knows what will happen to traitors. Damn, he's so ruthless! I guess that's why he and Aria make the perfect pair. Isis is still thinking about Rohan's final words and about the power she might have in her royal blood. But she seems to have given up on any chance at escape, even when they mention Oscar. Although he switched sides at the end, his title will be removed, making him a commoner. As she walks up to the guillotine, she feels a strange sense of peace descending over her. Will this be the moment where her royal powers finally appear? It is said that they only reveal themselves in times of mortal peril. For Prince Asher, it happened when he was young, running from assassins on the street with Aria. She saved his life after he'd been beaten by a group of kids and dragged him to safety. After discovering how harsh her lifestyle was, how she and her mother were so poor they had to eat grass to survive, he bought her a new dress and some food with the jewels he had stowed away. Aria didn't know he was a real prince at the time, but from her storybooks, she learned that princes were those who saved people, so she called him that as a nickname because he saved her life. And for the first time, Asher didn't hate the idea of becoming a prince. Unfortunately, their brief moment of peace came to an abrupt end when the assassin found Asher again. He got slashed in the back trying to protect his new friend, but Aria, being the brave girl she always has been, stood in between the prince and his assassin. She wanted to return the favor by protecting him for once, but in the critical moment before the murderer could strike, Asher's powers activated and he transported them to safety. Aria was still trying to figure out what happened when he told her to forget him and everything they'd been through together. He told her to stay safe and disappeared, leaving her to pass out on the sidewalk from shock. Obviously, when her mother found her unconscious and covered in blood, she freaked out. But she was fine in the end, since it was Asher's blood anyway. That memory makes Aria think that the truth of the royal powers is that they are only given to those who want to protect this country. I'm not sure I'm convinced by her theory, but maybe that's why, in the end, Isis's powers are never manifested. She is executed without delay, and while the crowd screams out against the traitorous witch, Asher raises her head for all to see. Wow, this just got really dark. Poor Oscar is standing in the crowd trying to figure out where it all went wrong. He once thought Aria was pitiful just like him, but now that she's sitting on a throne watching his sister's execution without batting an eye, he realizes the truth. The two of them are nothing alike. Aria asks Rohan what will happen to Oscar, and she is told that now he is a commoner, he will be exiled to a remote location designated by the imperial family. Facing the humiliation of his own inadequacy, Oscar is taken away right then and there by the guards. Aria is watching him go when suddenly Rohan announces that the sentencing is over, which means it's finally time for Chloe to tell the whole story of his romance with Karen and how he ended up abandoning her and Aria. I can already tell this is going to be juicy. Mielle suddenly comes running up to the podium, begging Aria to take her home. Her sister doesn't even look at her, she just walks away. It turns out the sentencing isn't going to be quite as straightforward as it seemed. For now, Aria plans to let Mielle stew in jail until she decides to pick her up, just to really rub some salt in the wound. They return to the Rosente estate for tea and cake. Immediately, Drama King Chloe performs his impression of the regretful father, saying how grateful he is to see Karen doing well, and admitting that he doesn't deserve to be concerned for her. Unsurprisingly, the girls aren't convinced by this display. Karen gets straight to the point, finally telling Aria that Chloe Piast is her biological father. The only reason he returned to the Empire was because Rohan heard the story and couldn't resist getting involved in the family drama. Chloe says he had no idea that Aria existed. He only returned because he hoped to reunite with Karen, fulfilling his promise to propose and take her to Kroa. Well, actually, it's Rohan who's pushing that agenda. As Asher loudly reminds him, Aria will not leave the Empire. So I guess the question is really whether or not her mother will go. Meanwhile, Mielle is sitting in a cell, which looks far too nice for her if you ask me. The secret terms of her sentence have been revealed. The one in charge of her welfare is actually Annie. I've never been so glad to see her face. She escorts Mielle outside, where a beautiful, elegant carriage is waiting. Is anyone else a little suspicious? Annie orders her to sit beside the driver, which causes Mielle to have a mini temper tantrum. But it's not like she has much choice. Right now, Annie is literally in control of her fate. Either she gets on the carriage or she goes back to jail. They ride through the center of town with Annie in the back, attracting the attention of all the civilians who recognize Mielle immediately. Humiliated, she orders the driver to go faster, even though the front seat is extra uncomfortable when they speed up. It turns out that Aria assigned Mielle's care to Annie because she thought it would make good practice for having a maid. She's going to be a baroness soon after all. But it's still a little strange for her to adjust to the fact that Mielle is no longer a lady. Soon, she'll be several statuses lower than Annie, the maid she used to mistreat and bully. Karma is kind after all. They arrive at the Rosente estate where Aria is waiting to greet them with open arms. There, she explains that Annie will be in charge of her, and from now on, she will act as a servant, just like her brother. It's quite a change for Mielle, who has never even taken a bath by herself before. But honestly, girl, that sounds like a you problem. A few days later, after the Rosente siblings have had a chance to adjust to servant life, Aria invites them both to have a private dinner, just the three of them. Kane is doing well working in the palace and is using his earnings to pay for their father's nursing home. Mielle is adjusting. But when she realizes that this servant situation might be permanent, she starts to panic. What? Did you think this was summer camp? You were nearly executed. It's only natural that the replacement punishment should be severe. Besides, she needs to keep working to help Kane pay off their father's medical bills, which is only fitting since she's the reason he ended up like that. It's decided that she will take Annie's position as maid once she leaves to get married, an idea that Mielle doesn't like one bit. A few days later, she is back to her tasks, scrubbing the hallways with the rest of the maids. Annie is a strict teacher, too. She's always quick to yell at Mielle when she messes up, which seems to happen a lot. But Aria, always watching from the sidelines, is surprised she isn't being harsher. She even gives her ex-maid permission to be a bit more cruel in the future, since she too has suffered under Mielle in the past. Just then, the woman of the hour bursts into Aria's room without knocking and tries to plead for mercy. But the lady of the mansion is more preoccupied with 2 letters she has just received. One is a letter from Lady Sarah's wedding, and the other is a letter from Asher promising to send her a matching outfit for the occasion. How thoughtful! Annie and the Baron are also invited, so she rushes off with Jessie to meet him and plan their own outfits, leaving the sisters alone. Mielle immediately falls to her knees, weeping and saying she's exhausted and all the maids are mean to her. Yeah, because you're so bad at your job. Aria pretends to play along, promising that she will yell at Annie on her sister's behalf. Although I think we all know that's not going to happen. Then she invites her to come to Lady Sarah's wedding to cheer her up. Even Mielle is a little suspicious at that, but her sister reassures her that the food, the music, and good company will lift her spirits, even if she doesn't end up dancing. Mielle agrees and soon gets back to her cleaning. She is feeling a lot more positive after her sister's rare show of kindness, but that optimism is soon dashed once the other maids refuse to help her do her work. The most they'll do is show her the right way, hoping that she'll finally learn how to do her tasks properly after that. She takes her lunch break outside, alone, where Jessie comes to bring a few cookies on behalf of Aria, claiming her older sister was worried and told her to take a break if things get too hard. Okay, seriously, what is going on here? I feel like something really twisted is coming. A few days later, Aria receives the gown that Asher picked out especially for her. As expected from the Crown Prince, it's exquisite and fits his fiancée perfectly. Annie also looks gorgeous, so it seems the Baron has good taste as well. Asher arrives on a glimmering white carriage, truly the Prince Charming of this tale. His casual charisma slips a bit when he realizes Mielle is tagging along, as he doesn't want to share the carriage with another lady. So they end up lumping Mielle and Annie together, a match made in hell. I just feel sorry for the Baron. When they arrive at the wedding, Mielle seems to have gained some of her arrogance back as she makes a sly comment to Annie that she's still technically under the care of the Recentes. That means if Mielle hadn't wanted her to come, she wouldn't have come. I'm not sure which potion of delusion Miss Mielle has been drinking, but I have a feeling she's about to get slapped by the cold hand of reality. It doesn't take long for the other guests to recognize her. Whispers float around the crowd using words like criminal and villainous to gossip shamelessly about her. Once all their attention is on her, Aria rushes to her sister's side to check that she's okay. Seeing her flustered, she ushers Mielle into a carriage and tells her to stay there until the end of the wedding so that she doesn't have to endure any more vicious gossip. Damn! She made her get all dressed up for nothing! Lady Sarah looks stunning in her gown and is still as sweet as ever, asking Aria to place a tiara on her head in place of her mother. While the guests watch their gorgeous ceremony, Asher asks his fiancée what color she would like for their wedding rings. Aria responds that she wants something to remind her of him, so that it feels like he is always by her side. How sweet. Meanwhile, Mielle watches on from the carriage, seething in her jealousy. Annie comes to bring her a plate of food, reluctantly acting like the bigger person. But of course, our villain just thinks she's trying to rub it in her face and dumps the food out of the carriage. Oh, come on. She's such a drama queen. Because of her stubbornness, she ends up getting carriage motion sickness because she's had an empty stomach for so long. Aria has to carry her out and asks Jessie to take her to a room for a chance to lie down. Mielle is being led up the stairs when she overhears Karen and her daughter discussing Chloe and finds out that he is Aria's biological father. Karen seems to have caved. She asks Aria to visit Croa before her coming-of-age ceremony so that she can greet her father's family for the first time. Wanting to hear the rest of this juicy info, Mielle asks Jessie if she can sit down on the stairs for a while, claiming she feels dizzy. Karen is trying to convince her daughter that she needs as much support as possible. Even though she might have snagged the Crown Prince, there will be lots of people who oppose her. She just doesn't know it yet. So getting closer with her father's family, considering their power and their royal blood, would be a huge asset to her in the future. And it does make sense. You can never have too many cards in your hand, right? Aria can see the logic and agrees to make the trip. She catches Mielle on the stairs and sends her upstairs to a bedroom. Never missing a chance to complain, Mielle immediately claims that this is all Annie's fault for calling her out in front of the other guests and catching everyone's attention. Just like before, Aria plays the saint, suggesting that her sister and the future Baroness sit down for a chat to clear out all their misunderstandings. Yeah, like that would solve the problem. Once they're alone, Mielle asks Aria if she truly is the daughter of the Marquis of Croa. Aria is caught off guard and realizes she must have been eavesdropping. But she keeps her composure and asks her sister to keep her secret for now, as she intends to reveal it to high society a little later. Then Aria's mood suddenly turns dark, and she asks if it was her who fed her poisoned tea. Mielle stammers her response, saying it was all Emma. Aria agrees. I mean, technically, Mielle didn't actually do the poisoning herself. And Emma was the reason she ended up with such an arrogant attitude anyway. From the beginning, she instilled in Mielle a superior mindset, always telling her that Aria and her mother were common trash who were not to be treated the same way as noble ladies. Mielle is lost for words. As if that whole situation wasn't confusing enough, her sister suddenly embraces her and says that if she wants revenge on Annie, she's willing to help. Is she trying to trick her into another poisoning plot? Mielle asks as much, but Aria assures her that she would never recommend something dangerous. There's a special flower called judoa that gives someone a stomach ache if added in moderation. It's more like a prank, but if they did it over a long period of time, Annie might become hysterical with stress and soon she would have to be dismissed, finally freeing Mielle of her chief tormentor. The next morning when they're back at the estate, Annie snaps at Mielle again for shirking her duties. While her sister lurks in the shadows, Aria loudly comments that she'd like some special tea that afternoon, setting their plan in motion. I hope she knows what she's doing. Mielle spends the whole morning making tea from the judoa flower. The dosage was recommended by Aria, but she can't seem to help herself and keeps adding dose after dose to the cup. She even contemplates putting the poison in the teapot itself, putting Aria's life at risk too. Oh god, is this all going to go horribly wrong? Mielle sets up a table for tea in the garden. When Aria arrives, she makes a point of asking her sister if she measured the dosage properly, and Mielle, with the least convincing expression I've ever seen, assures her that everything will go fine. How did she become the villainess with all these kind of acting skills? A little later, Annie bursts in, surprised to see Mielle looking so focused for once. I think we have to assume that Annie knows all about this plot, especially since she whispers something about a special visitor having just arrived to Aria. Looks like there's another surprise in store for Mielle, and it's none other than Kane, her brother. I bet she regrets poisoning the whole teapot now. The whole affair quickly turns from an intimate prank between the three ladies to high-stakes game of poison roulette. Mielle tries to make an excuse about preparing something more special for her brother, but Annie just snatches the tray away and says she'll serve them herself. Mielle tries to signal to her sister that there's something wrong, but that would involve admitting that she tried to poison Aria as well. So the lady of the house feigns ignorance and encourages her former brother to drink up. The tea was prepared by his precious sister after all. The sister in question ends up having a complete breakdown, but it's too late. Kane already drank it. He's complimenting her brewing ability when suddenly blood dribbles from his mouth and he falls to the ground. Even Aria wasn't expecting this. For him to have had such an immediate reaction means that there was an insane amount of poison in the pot. Everyone scrambles for a doctor, but by the time one arrives, his heart has stopped beating. Crazy with grief, Mielle loses it and tries to lunge at her sister. She only stops short of tearing her eyes out because Jessie is holding her back. Aria asks her straight up if the tea was intended for her instead of Kane, doing her best impression of a shocked, innocent bystander. You know, Aria really scares me sometimes. Anyone else still not sure if she meant for Kane to die or not? Like, that was crazy acting if she did. Soon, Mielle is back in a jail cell listening to the guards outside gossiping about her evil deeds. Even Mielle is feeling disgusted with herself. One by one, all the people closest to her have been sacrificed for her own vicious schemes. Back at the estate, an investigation ropes the crown prince into the affair, since Kane was a servant of the imperial family at the time of his death. Everyone knows by now that she was trying to kill her sister, so public sentiment has turned completely in Aria's favor, which means she has free reign to do pretty much anything she wants with Mielle now. I don't think people would blame her even if she had her sister put to death. That evening, Jessie and Aria sit down to a non-poisoned cup of tea where Jessie apologizes for being kind to Mielle and taking her side against Annie. Aria forgives her, but adds a sly comment about today being a lesson, that you should never give your trust so easily to anyone. Several days later, Asher pays a visit. Despite his usual flirty charm, he actually came to talk about Mielle, the murderer, who is currently locked up in her cell awaiting the results of the investigation. The investigators have taken her behavior at the scene of the crime to be a sign of delirium, which you can't blame them for. I would think Mielle was crazy too if I hadn't seen all the cruel tricks she's been pulling for 100 chapters. Asher asks if she wants any particular punishment for her sister, but Aria leaves it up to the law. She's done enough already. It's time to finally relinquish her revenge. Asher can see that this is kind of the end for her vendetta and offers to help her if there's anything final she'd like to do. And there is. The two of them appear in Mielle's cell, infuriating the inmate who immediately starts screaming at her sister. Aria ends up spilling everything. The truth about her past life, how she was tortured and belittled by Mielle, who even went so far as to poison her mother and ensure her public execution once her reputation was in tatters. Understandably, Mielle has no idea what she's talking about. Actually, she thinks that Aria is the crazy one. But she asks her younger sister one all-important question. If she had done nothing and never tried to take revenge, would the Recentes have been a happy, peaceful family? Both girls know that could never be true. If she had lived her life again without striking first, it would have been just the same ending. Because that's just who Mielle is, an arrogant and cruel girl. Even now, she is losing her temper because she thinks Aria is delusional and that all of this is because of her sister and not her own actions. Girl, you want to talk delusion? Take a look in the mirror. Asher hears someone coming, so they leave Mielle to her madness and get out of there. The next morning, her last day has come. She has walked to the guillotine with a sack over her head. All she can hear are the whispers of the crowd calling her a villainess, saying she deserves to die. She seems to have no emotion as she sits down to the block. But when she spots her sister in the crowd, she tries to imagine what life might have been like if they had been kind to each other. They could have spent the years like real sisters and grown up together. But just as Aria said in her cell last night, that kind of reality could never have come true. Aria doesn't blink as the guillotine comes down, killing the villain she has fought so hard to beat and ending 2 lifetimes of revenge. Aria doesn't feel any regret. In fact, she feels a sense of peace and even thanks her sister for continuing to live in delusion so that she could become the worst version of herself. Wow, I didn't realize Aria was so metal. A few days after the execution, life has gone back to normal, as if nothing ever happened. I have to wonder, now that Mielle, the sole focus of her second life, is dead, what will Aria do now? I mean, I know she has her prince to marry, but what about her purpose in life? Aria was even half hoping that she would become a ghost and haunt her, but so far, there's been nothing. In lighter news, Karen and Chloe's wedding is finally here, presenting the perfect opportunity for Aria to visit Croa and meet her family on the Piast side. Karen is surprisingly emotional in the carriage. She admits that she didn't raise her daughter with a lot of love. Well, I guess there wasn't time for all that while they were surviving on the streets. So she feels strongly about reuniting her with the Piast so that Aria can experience what true family love is like. Aww. Aria isn't really interested in all that right now. She's more concerned with the fiancé she's left behind, since she knows he'll be acting all moody in his office without her. And she's bang on the money. He already regrets not going with her, but Croa is too far to teleport in one go. Asher suddenly realizes that Rohan will have the chance to flirt with his fiancée all he likes while he's gone, and that's the final straw. Rain and his butlers try to convince him that his work is more important, that Aria wouldn't want him to come, but that only makes things worse. The only person who can talk some sense into him is Sorke, who asks His Highness to use this time to make their suspicious plan far grander. He also suggests that Aria would be offended if she thought he didn't trust her to handle herself around Rohan, which is the first good point any of these guys have made. Sorke's words get through to Asher, so he decides to stay home and work harder. Of course, his fears about Rohan were absolutely correct. He's already grinning and beaming from the moment Aria appears in front of him. Since he's a bit of a nuisance, Chloe and Karen convince him not to stay for the whole ceremony. It seems like he just wanted to see Aria on his home turf, honestly. Anyway, once he's gone, she gets a chance to finally meet her extended family. She already knows Chloe and the Marquise, but there's also Violet, who is a beautiful and radiant woman. She really reminds Aria of Frey, especially in how doting and affectionate she is. She even asks if she can hold her hand and asks her to call her grandma from now on. Aria is already very uncomfortable with the smiles and warmth being thrown at her. It's not exactly her usual vibe, is it? Maybe Asher should have come after all. Violet shows Aria to her room to rest, but honestly, it's less of a room and more like a whole suite. They prepared only the very best to welcome their lost granddaughter home. Violet leaves her with Annie and Jessie, who are jumping for joy at the sight of so much luxury. But Aria feels more suspicious than welcomed. She's had a hard life, so it's only natural that things like this make her a little cynical. She thinks they might want something, but honestly, I'm pretty sure they're just happy to have her, plain and simple. A few days in, and Aria is almost at her limit. Her grandma is taking special care to cater to her every want and need, even things she didn't ask for. Since it's a bit uncomfortable, she starts trying to figure out the family politics and why her elders are spending so much effort to make her feel special. Jessie and Annie are the only people who can snap her out of it and make her see that there are no ulterior motives. No hidden villains lurking behind painted smiles. This is just what a real family looks like. Of course, she would have no idea what that is, considering she spent 2 lives trying to kill her sister, who in turn killed her brother. In an even darker twist, the Count Rosente apparently hung himself in his care facility when he heard about Mielle, so no wonder Aria is a little twisted. It's kinda sad if you think about it. Aria and Mielle were like Batman and the Joker. Now that she doesn't have a villain to fight and scheme against, she doesn't know what to do. Jessie suggests that she have a conversation with her grandmother outside of mealtimes to adjust to her in a less formal setting. Aria agrees and wanders out to the gardens to find her grandma. But instead of Violet, she runs into Rohan, who invites her to take a walk with him instead. Ugh, why is this guy always popping up when he isn't wanted? We're trying to do some generational healing here, Rohan. Go back and run your country. Actually, Rohan has arrived to try and bring Aria and her family closer together. He just loves sticking his nose in other people's business, huh? He's heard about her not coming out of her room very much, so he was worried that she hasn't been enjoying his country, or wasn't getting on well with her relatives. Again, I don't know why that's any of his business, but he's here now. Surprisingly, Aria opens up and admits that she doesn't know how to accept love from a stranger. But Rohan points out that he feels the same way as her grandmother. Actually, there are a lot of people in debt to Miss Aria for her actions over the past few years. It's only natural that they would want to return that gratitude with kindness. Just as he's asking her to sit down and talk it out, halfway across the world, Asher gets a sudden sense that his love is in danger. It's like he's got a spidey sense for Rohan. But for once, the king is being calm and considerate. He tells her the story of when he first met Asher, when he accidentally teleported to Kroa after nearly being killed by assassins. Ever since then, Rohan has wanted to help Asher, but due to his stubborn and solitary nature, it's been difficult to secure peace treaties and establish good relationships between the countries. But ever since he met Aria, Asher has changed. His powers grew stronger, his diplomatic missions went more smoothly, everything just fell into place. So Rohan has a lot of gratitude for the impact Aria has made on her fiancé. He suggests that Violet may feel grateful in a similar way, just for different reasons. If she's really so curious, then Rohan suggests just asking her why. Aria has a moment of realization, both about herself and her dead sister Mielle, how they both turned each other into such rotten, emotionless villains. Within her mind, the ghost of Mielle tries to convince her that she will never be able to experience happiness, and that if everyone knew who she really was inside, they would be horrified. But Aria brushes her off. She has finally made a world where she can live free of Mielle. She's not going to let some deadbeat ghost stop her from enjoying it. When she stands from the bench in her grandmother's garden, Aria feels lighter. She thanks Rohan for talking with her and runs off to ask Violet for a walk. A few days later, Karen and Chloe's wedding is in full swing. Everyone is smiling, even Aria, who caught the bouquet. I mean, there are no spoilers there. We've been waiting for her wedding since chapter 12. The walk with her grandmother went well. They were able to comfort one another about their family, even though they've been split apart for so many years. Violet even apologized for clinging to her so much and thanks her for opening up and talking with her. When the wedding is over, Aria gets persuaded by her father and grandma to host her coming-of-age ceremony in Kroa, so they can have a little more time together as a family, which is a delight for everyone, except Asher. Hasn't the poor guy held out long enough already? The Piast household is immediately taken over with preparation and decorations for the extravagant ceremony. No expense is to be spared. Although the surprise is ruined a bit by the fact that they keep talking about all the presents and design choices loud enough for Aria to hear. She plans to return to the Empire as soon as the ceremony is over, which means leaving her mother behind in Kroa with Chloe and the rest of her Piast family. When the ceremony rolls around, Aria enjoys a night of being pampered by the best of the Crowan nobility. She's everyone's darling, surrounded by all the presents and cake she could ever want. There's just one thing missing. One thing that arrives behind a giant bouquet of imperial tulips. I mean, did you really think Asher was going to miss her coming-of-age ceremony after leaving her alone for so long? All the guests, including Aria, freak out at his arrival. He spent the whole morning debating whether to show up or not and ended up using his powers to get all the way to Croa from the Empire. That explains why he looks so tired. Asher is soon swarmed by Crowan nobles, but he's too exhausted to make polite conversation, so Aria takes him out to the balcony for a little privacy. As soon as they're alone, the prince perks up, pulling her onto his lap. He brushes her hair aside and holds her cheek, asking why she's gone so red. Dude, maybe because you've never been this close before? Or maybe Aria had a bit more to drink than she realized. After weeks of missing her, Asher can't hold himself back. He sneaks in a kiss, and then another, and then another. They're so totally obsessed with each other, telling one another how cute they are in between kisses. Little do they know that half the family is lurking around the corner, trying to catch a peek of the young couple. Ew, guys, get back inside! Eventually, the party ends, and the Piast family gather to wave goodbye to their long-lost granddaughter. Violet is devastated to be waving her off so early, but now that the crown prince is here, they really can't afford to hang around. Aria invites them all to visit the Empire and waves goodbye from her carriage. As they roll away, Asher subtly hands her a handkerchief. Without even realizing it, the villainess herself has shed a few tears. That family love must have got through to her in the end. The prince ends up going on alone because apparently there's some kind of emergency back at the capital that demands his attention. When her carriage rolls back up to the gates of the Empire, they find the road lined with tulips. Actually, the road through the capital is covered in red carpet and lined with flowers. At the very end of it stands the prince, holding a box. Oh my god, I think I know what's going on. As she steps down, he drops to one knee and she runs to him, taking the ring and starting the rest of their lives together. The wedding was beautiful. The whole country cheered for their new crown princess. She seems to have found her happy ending at last. Everything is like a fairy tale. But just as the story seems to be wrapping up, a little blonde girl named Bliss Franche comes running through space and time, determined to change the future looming ahead. Uh-oh, here we go again, guys. On Aria's end, everything went perfectly for the next few years. Jessie got married and Asher became the emperor. Aria is doing her duties like usual on a perfectly normal day when suddenly she spies a little girl with blue eyes hiding behind the couch. Instead of acting shy, the girl comes out and introduces herself as Bliss and says she's from Croa. Aria is about to call the guards when she notices a mole on the girl's left ear. The same mole that Aria, her father, and her grandmother all have. Intrigued, Aria sits her down, noting all the similarities between them. She assumes the girl is some kind of half-sister of hers, maybe from Chloe's adventures before he reconnected with her mother. But before she can ask Bliss any questions about her family, she disappears. The future empress thinks she must have dreamed the whole thing up, but then reports come of an intruder in the imperial palace who has ruined their coronation outfits. What a weirdly specific thing to do. It's just water, so the outfits will probably be okay. But the bigger question is, who would dare to go against the future emperor and empress like that? While she's dreaming of polishing up the guillotine, Asher appears and hugs her from behind, asking for a report. No one saw how the intruder got in, but they decide to double the guards anyhow and have the palace searched. Though, I'm having a feeling no one is going to find that little girl. Not if she can travel through space and time. When the intruder returns at night, Asher rushes to the scene at once, ordering guards to be sent to the crown princess's room. They appeared in the kitchen, and while no one caught the intruder, they've been busy tampering with all kinds of culinary preparation. What a weird thing to target! First the coronation outfits, and now this? What is this girl's motive? Asher considers that the intruder might have powers like him. It's the only thing that would explain their ability to appear and disappear at a moment's notice without ever being seen. His suspicions are confirmed when more guards storm in, announcing that the crown princess's changing room was entered, as well as her greenhouse. That suggests that the intruder is going after Aria, which sends Asher into high alert mode. He assigns Sorke to lead the search and head to his bedroom to work from there. But as soon as he enters, he senses that someone is inside. Spotting a shadow under his desk, he grabs an arm and yanks them off the floor to reveal Bliss. Actually, she looks so similar to Aria when she was younger that at first, Asher thinks it might be her. But those bright blue eyes are unmistakable, and there's still a trace of royal powers on her fingers. Asher asks her not to teleport, promising not to be mad. Reminded of her younger years playing as a kid, Bliss falls into his arms and begins to cry. He's still holding her when rain rushes in, and suddenly, she vanishes. The only sign she was ever there at all are the sweeties under the desk. Hilariously, Asher also assumes Bliss must be another child of Chloe's, which is really just insane. Anyone can tell at first sight that she's their daughter. The next person to find her is Aria, who walks in on her by accident in the secret room, known only to members of the Imperial family. If that isn't a giveaway, I don't know what is. Of course, she doesn't realize this is her daughter, so Aria acts like her old villainous self, threatening the girl with death if she doesn't explain what she's doing and how she got here. I bet Bliss has never seen that side of her mother before. She asks if she's hiding from assassins, wondering if this girl is suffering the same kind of threat as Asher when he was younger. Bliss gets tearful again and says she's only hiding because she's a bad kid. Aria then asks her how her powers were awakened, and Bliss admits that it was very early, while she was being born, in fact. Because the birth was difficult, she nearly didn't make it out and made her mother very sick. The young girl feels very guilty about causing pain to her mother, so Aria assumes she must have died during childbirth. She still believes Bliss to be a half-sister through her father, and frankly, she can't be bothered dealing with any more family drama. But it's clear that she's confused and scared. So Aria agrees to let her stay at the Imperial Palace for a while, telling her not to cause any more trouble or run away. Bliss perks up after that. It turns out she wasn't up to some grand plan by messing around in the kitchen or ruining the coronation clothes. They were all just accidents after teleporting. So Aria's hoping that if she's allowed to come out in the open, she will stop making so much mess. She sends the girl off to get cleaned up, after which she bumps into her father in the hallway. With his shadow looming over her, she gets a little scared. Even more so, she's left alone with him. But he's softer this time. The Crown Prince suggests they go somewhere private to discuss her abilities, and even lets her hold his hand. Once they're sat down, he asks if she's related to either of them, and Bliss answers too quickly that she's a half-sibling. Yeah, right. I don't know how she thinks that will fool anyone. Even Asher has noticed their eyes are the same. He decides to be direct and asks straight up if Bliss is his daughter from the future. Ding, ding, ding! We have a winner, folks! Bliss is shocked, especially since her mother didn't figure it out. But Asher isn't interested in bragging because he's already 3 steps ahead, having realized that something bad must happen in the future if his daughter has come back to the past. Bliss tells him calmly that he's right. There's no need to worry because she knows how to make sure Aria stays alive by never giving birth. Whoa. That's so deep. She went back in time to ask her father never to be born? Just when I thought this series couldn't get any darker. Asher is freaking out at the idea of his wife dying, which is totally understandable. So Bliss elaborates. In her timeline, Aria isn't actually dead. She's just very sick. She can't stand unassisted or travel long distances. And Bliss truly believes that it's because of her and the complications at her birth. But even though Asher isn't her father right now, that doesn't mean he doesn't have a responsibility to her. He tells her there's no way he'd give up a daughter like her, so making sure she's never born is simply not an option. But Bliss says it's for her own sake as well as theirs. It must be horrible to see her parents suffer. She feels so guilty that some days she just wants to disappear. That's partly why she came back. She wanted to see her mother and father happy and healthy again, especially at the coronation ceremony from before she was born. She was so in awe when she saw the clothes that she stumbled and accidentally spilled her water on them. She plans to leave after the coronation and tells her father firmly that the only way for all of them to be happy is for her to disappear. Her father seems troubled, but he agrees for now, so long as she promises to keep the truth a secret from Aria. He just has to pretend to go along with the plan for now and figure it out later. Otherwise, all hell could break loose. He carries Bliss, who is pretending to be asleep, over to Aria's room. They agree to let her stay in the palace for a while as Aria's half-sibling. They called for a doctor to check on Bliss's knee, which she scraped while messing around in the greenhouse. Jessie arrives first, however, and loses it when she sees Bliss. To avoid any more rumors about her messy family, Aria says Bliss is her cousin. I guess Jessie and the royal daughter must have a good relationship in the future because Bliss can't help but grab her hand, alerting her mother who knows that imperial powers are supposed to really wear you out. Bliss then really blows her cover when she opens her eyes for a peek. She quickly shuts them again, but a smile stays on her face after seeing her parents and Jessie happy and healthy together once more. It reminds her of her purpose and the reason she came here. To disappear. The doctor's visit confirms that Bliss is perfectly healthy, nothing but a bruise on her knee. Aria and Asher have a meeting with the noble, so Jessie agrees to look after Bliss in the next few days. Once the adults have left, Bliss has the idea to stay in this timeline. Perhaps if she stayed, she would never be born, then she would never need to tell her mother the truth and could stay with them. I'm not sure I'm totally convinced by that theory, but at this point, she's desperate. And that's partly because she overheard one of the house staff mentioning that they wished Aria had never had children. And the staff member was Ruby, who walks in right on cue to see Bliss in her chamber. She seems very suspicious of the girl and immediately asks which family she's from. Ruby already has a poor impression of her because of the mess she's caused around the house. She wants to kick her out, but in the midst of the coronation preparation, she doesn't have the time. Instead, she decides to take Bliss under her personal care for the entire duration of her stay. In the future, Ruby is a very strict member of the household, so she's not exactly Bliss's favorite. But at the moment, she's got ambition to be the most powerful handmaiden in the Imperial City. I guess she enjoys using what power she has already because she orders Bliss to take up a different room and serve her meals directly to her so that she comes into contact with the Crown Prince and Princess as little as possible. Bliss is too scared of Ruby to refuse, but luckily, Jessie and Annie walk in just then. They stand up to Ruby and tell her that a relative of the Crown Princess should be kept close. It seems Annie and Ruby don't get along very well, as they have very different ideas of how to be Aria's ideal handmaiden. Ruby is terrifying when she's angry. In the future, Bliss never remembers Annie going up against her like this, maybe because she eventually moves away to live with the Baron. While Bliss is cheering Annie on, Jessie steps in before someone can throw hands. Jessie points to Bliss and says they're frightening her. Clearly, she didn't see her with the pom-poms 2 seconds ago. But Bliss gets the memo. She immediately starts tearing up and acting innocent. Looks like she inherited her mother's acting skills. Always the peacemaker, Jessie settles the matter by deciding that Bliss will stay in this room, close to her cousin. Ruby gives in and stalks off to work off her temper somewhere else. Jessie and Annie decide to take Bliss shopping to eat some delicious dessert. They even hold her hand. Bliss tries on every dress in the shop, turning out outfit after outfit to Annie and Jessie's delight. She's so adorable that they can't help but buy everything, treating her like a little dress-up doll. They send the packages back to the palace and out for a walk, catching the attention of a familiar face as they pass in the street. Meanwhile, Aria and Asher are having a slightly awkward dinner back at the palace. Asher isn't very good at hiding his emotions at the best of times, but he can't get anything past Aria. She says he's been acting weird ever since Bliss arrived and asks him coldly if he's been hiding anything. Asher knows he couldn't lie to her, so he admits that there are a few secrets Bliss asked him to keep. Just for now. Surprisingly, Aria accepts this, probably because she doesn't want to find out any more about her father's many affairs. She tells Ruby that she will soon make a visit to her mother's and also asks that the coronation outfits not be replaced. It was only a bit of water anyway. She and Asher finish dinner and return to their offices to work through the evening. That's what Aria was planning anyway, until Sarah arrives. She's just as affectionate as she was in the past. Even though they still meet regularly, Sarah takes every opportunity to get close and cuddly with her old friend. In behind her comes Jessie and Annie, with Bliss in one of her new dresses. It's kind of, how do I put this politely? It's a little loud? Aria thinks so too, but Sarah picked it, so she keeps her mouth shut while Bliss starts to show off her other new purchases. You might think Aria would be angry about them spending all her money on some garish outfits for a distant relative, but Aria is more concerned about her energy levels. Bliss used her powers a lot over the past few days, and she seemed to be passed out the last time she saw the girl, so how has she recovered so quickly? She also knows the Imperial Palace well enough to have requested a room close to the Crown Princess, and she even hid in the secret room before. Aria seems to have finally figured out the truth. As if her powers weren't enough, Sarah's constant compliments about how similar the two ladies look has sealed the deal. But now that she knows Bliss is her daughter, Aria also knows that something must go wrong in the future. Why else would she return to the past? Bliss suddenly falls asleep in the middle of changing outfits. Whether her side effects have finally kicked in or she's just exhausted from a day of shopping, we can't tell. While putting her to bed, Annie confesses a secret of her own. She's pregnant. which is delightful news, but apparently less important than telling Aria that Ruby is far too arrogant to be a handmaid. It's nice to know Annie's priorities haven't changed. But Aria takes her very seriously since she has also noticed Ruby acting a little peculiar. Annie goes on to explain the whole exchange with Ruby and Bliss and how she tried to keep the two of them separated. Aria is surprised to hear that's all that happened. After fighting real villains like Mielle, she was expecting something more dramatic like sabotaging her carriage or poisoning her tea. She sends Annie and the rest of the ladies home with a smile and a wave. Alone once again, she starts to doubt Bliss's parentage, wondering if she was too hasty to assume that her daughter could have traveled back in time to see them. I mean, it does sound insane when you think about it. She returns to her bedroom to find Asher already there, perfectly positioned to show off his physique. Anyone else get the sense he's been there for a while? Aria changes into her nightgown and joins him on the bed. Things are just getting steamy when Aria suddenly asks him if Bliss is their daughter from the future. Oh my god! She caught him at his most vulnerable! Poor Asher can't deny it and spends the whole evening and the next morning sweating with stress. His daughter is just as panicky because now that Aria knows half the secret, the rest is sure to come spilling out at some point. They're probably safe for a while though because Aria is hung up on why her future self failed to teach her daughter proper manners. It's making Ruby's vendetta against Bliss even stronger. As she's watching from the corner, Aria asks if her mother never taught her good table etiquette. Poor Bliss nearly has a heart attack and tries to stand up for herself, but she ends up crying, claiming her mother just used to laugh at her whenever she made a mistake at dinner. That's actually pretty reassuring to Aria, who has never quite been sure if she'd be too strict or mean to be a good mother. That's partly why she suspects that Bliss has come back, because she's worried she might have mistreated her in the future and been a bad parent. She tells Bliss that her mother must love her very much, or else she wouldn't have the patience to laugh kindly instead of getting frustrated with her manners. But still, that doesn't mean she can slack off and act like a fool. She's the daughter of the future emperor and empress after all. When the next course comes, Bliss makes an effort to be extra specially polite, and Aria praises her. After breakfast, the ladies gather again at the palace for Annie's pregnancy announcement. She's already 3 months down the line. Bliss comes running up to congratulate her and says the baby will be a beautiful little girl, just like Bliss. Well, she would know, since she's from the future and all. And speaking of meddling with the timelines, Aria has just realized something. In her past life, Sarah was known for being a dedicated countess who had lots of kids and took very good care of them, but in this one, she hasn't had any. Aria wonders if this is her fault for going back and giving her so many jobs, keeping her too busy to start a family. But then Bliss runs up to Sarah and tells her that she'll have a child too, a very nice little boy, and he's coming soon. Aria grabs the coffee out of her hand and calls for a doctor. She wants to check right away whether Sarah could really be pregnant or not. The doctor confirms that she is indeed with child. And not only that, but she's only 6 weeks away from delivery. How do all these women not realize they're pregnant? And where are the bumps? Everyone is delighted to hear the news, and they all say Bliss is incredible for being able to see the future. They have no idea how true that really is. Sarah rushes home to tell her husband, and so does Annie. Apparently, it was more important to tell her friends than the father of her child. Jessie has more work to do, so soon it's just Aria and her daughter left to finish yesterday's fashion show. The first outfit is even more ridiculous than yesterday's. I guess Sarah must be a fan of big fancy frills because all of the dresses are very grand and very girly. After 10 outfits, Bliss is exhausted, so they sit down to have a break and chat. Aria tricks her into giving away some details of Sarah's future child, and when she accuses Bliss of actually having met him, she scrambles to come up with an excuse. Aria tells her not to lie, and suddenly she starts to cry again. She promises she doesn't mean to lie and asks her mother to just wait a little longer. Aria hugs her and tells her not to cry, but Bliss seems to have gone limp in her arms. When she pulls back, the girl has completely passed out. Uh-oh. Is this a side effect of traveling back in time or something more serious? After another visit from the doctor, who is practically living with them at this point, it's determined that Bliss is perfectly healthy, just exhausted. But just in case, she prescribes some medicine to alleviate the symptoms. This must be because of her complications at birth. If she nearly died, then it would make sense that she grew up a little weak and prone to fainting. Aria watches over her daughter as she sleeps, wondering if the reason she came back is really because she herself has fallen ill. When Bliss wakes up, half the day has already passed. Feeling sympathetic toward her tired little daughter, she brings Bliss to her office to do some drawing while she does her own work at the desk. Asher is surprised when he stumbles upon this scene. He wonders if Aria is being so nice because she figured out the truth. The three of them have lunch outside, giving Bliss a chance to wander around the garden, gazing at the endless rows of tulips her father planted for his lover. While they're enjoying cherries and ice cream, Ruby has her usual sour expression, glaring at Bliss for acting so casually in front of the crown princess. Honestly, lady, give it a break. She's only 6. Spring is coming up, so they end up discussing the festival that has been pushed back this year due to the coronation. After a little prodding, Aria finds out that Bliss has never been to a festival. Something to do with her mother not enjoying them. Anyway, Aria orders Ruby to bring the festival forward so that it will happen before the coronation, which means Bliss can attend. Wait, did she just rearrange the entire royal schedule so that her daughter could have a day out? That is so cute! Having a daughter has really melted her icy heart. The poor staff are a little flustered that they now have to plan the whole festival in the space of a week. So to lighten the burden a little, Aria has extended the budget to be almost limitless. After hearing that, the spirits of the other staff members are very much lifted. But Ruby is still feeling sour. She's frustrated at all the attention Bliss is taking, and how she seems to be making Her Highness the Crown Princess act irrationally. As if by fate, Ruby stumbles upon Bliss taking a nap in the garden. She gently shakes her awake and asks again if she can move her room further away from Aria. She tries to bribe the young girl, but nothing works. So instead, she lets her true colors show, guilt-tripping Bliss by telling her that everyone in the palace is having a hard time because of her. Wait, I've just put the pieces together. Wasn't it Ruby in the future who says Bliss is the reason for Aria's health fading? Oh my god, she's so manipulative! She claims that Bliss asked to have the festival moved up, and that's making everyone suffer, which is absolutely not what happened. But it gets worse. She tells Bliss that she's causing nothing but problems for the crown princess and that she should stop hanging around her. Poor Bliss bursts into tears, truly believing that she's a terrible daughter. Seeing that she's won, Ruby takes her hand and leads her toward the other bedroom. By some small miracle, Aria catches them on their way and spots the tears in Bliss's eyes. She immediately figures out what has happened and turns her cold gaze on Ruby, asking why she lied. For some reason, Ruby seems proud of the fact that she just tried to gaslight a child. She tells Aria that her intention was to get Bliss out of her way, to make sure she couldn't be a nuisance to Her Highness. Oh, Ruby, how wrong you were. Aria tells her to get out at once and declares that deceiving the royal family is a crime. From now on, Ruby will be banned from the Imperial Palace and everything to do with it. Somehow, this comes as a shock to the arrogant maid. In her twisted mind, she truly thought she was being a good servant. Well, funnily enough, good servants don't sneak around behind their mistress's back and mistreat their kids. It's a good thing that Aria has seen Ruby for who she truly is, but the choice to fire her has already had an impact in her future, where a little girl with deep blue hair named Lipe finds that the usual maid Ruby has been replaced with Tiaran, the girl in charge of the festival in this timeline. Lipe doesn't seem happy at all, and she knows exactly who to blame. It's Bliss, meddling in the past. But more importantly, who is she? I think we're about to find out, since Lipe approaches what looks to be a sleeping Bliss. But which timeline are they in? She violently grabs her collar and yanks her awake, screaming that everyone knows she's only faking. Asher, who is walking down the hall outside, draws his sword the moment he hears noises from her room. He storms in to find a miniature version of himself pulling his daughter's hair. As if that didn't clear things up enough already, Lipe introduces herself to Asher as his daughter from the future. His other one. Because, plot twist, they're twins. Time-traveling twins. It turns out that Lipe overheard her parents worrying about Bliss going back in time to try to stop her birth from happening. They were distraught at the idea, so Lipe came back too to make sure that Bliss will still be born. Lipe, unlike Bliss, was born a healthy child with no complications. So Asher asks for her help, and finally the twins reveal the whole story of Aria's troubling health. Bliss nearly died inside the womb, which was how her imperial abilities were activated. Lipe was totally healthy, but since they came as a pair, there's no way to make sure that one is born and not the other. It also means there's nothing Asher can do to stop it from happening in his own timeline, which is not good news. Flash forward to the future, in the timeline that the twins are currently missing from, and we discover that there is also a third sibling. A young, very studious boy. Although, how they managed to have a third kid after nearly dying the first time, or maybe he's the firstborn? Oh, I can't tell. Is anyone else getting kind of confused? Anyway, Bliss and Lai Pei had an argument before she went back in time. She felt responsible for her mother's health, and since she has no idea how long she might live with her weak heart, she decided to go back and try to erase herself from history. But how can you erase one twin and not the other? They're still fighting about exactly the same thing in the present day, where their poor father watches on, wondering if this is what his future holds. Screaming children who never stop bickering. The fight evolves from slaps to chasing each other across the room, using their special abilities to teleport out of reach. Asher doesn't try to stop them. He just watches. Honestly, he seems kind of impressed. Eventually, he uses his own powers to catch and scold them for using their abilities recklessly. As he carries them out of the room, Bliss starts to breathe faster, signaling another of her fainting spells. They get her in bed, where Lai Pei dutifully takes care of her older sister, despite still being mad at her. Asher summons a doctor, wondering how to tell his wife about his latest development. Lucky for him, he doesn't have to. She's waiting right outside the door. And it sounds like she heard something, because the first question she asks him is if Bliss came back in time to die. Oh God. As if it wasn't complicated enough before. The next morning, the twins are introduced to Annie and Jessie, who are just as obsessed with Lai Pei as they are with Bliss. The only one who hasn't fallen head over heels for the new arrival is Aria, who has barely said a word to her younger daughter since she arrived. Right away, Annie asks if she can take them shopping, but Aria turns her down. Today, they're expecting a visit from Madame Clossier, the lady who made the precious coronation outfits that Bliss so nearly ruined. As soon as Clossier arrives, Bliss apologizes, wilting at the glare of her glasses. It takes about 2 seconds before the lady is won over by the girl's cuteness, and suddenly, everything is forgiven. Some of her madness slips out when she spots Lai Pei and is immediately overcome with a need to make the twins a pair of matching outfits. She presents her sketches to the kids and then asks permission to have them attend the coronation as flower girls, spreading petals for the emperor and empress to walk over. It would also mean that they would be pictured in all the portraits of the day. It's a nice idea, but could it change the future again? Aria might be thinking the same thing, as she decides not to show the kids off in public. They especially can't be showing their faces in the past, but Madame Clossier says that's not a problem. They can just wear veils. It still sounds risky if you ask me, but Bliss begs her mother until she agrees, and suddenly, the outfits appear before them. Bliss goes off to get measured first, leaving Lai Pei and Aria a chance to talk in private. The future empress doesn't waste time with chit-chat. Right away, she admits that she knows everything about who the twins really are and why they're here. She assures Lai Pei that she has no intention of doing what Bliss wants, because that means she might disappear too. And she also knows that deep down, Lai Pei is afraid that even if Bliss did go, she might end up being the weak child that hurts their mother instead. She pulls her daughter into a hug and asks what kind of things she likes. It's hard seeing her children suffer so much, facing their own deaths at such a young age. Aria just wants to see the poor girl smile. Quietly, Lai Pei admits that she likes tarts and lemon sorbet. And for just that moment, she looks like a normal kid. I guess she doesn't eat sweet things very often because her sister is shocked when she attacks a table full of cakes and ice cream. Now that her mother has promised to step in and handle everything, I guess she can sit back and relax. Tiaran and Aria return to announce that the festival will take place from tomorrow. She has to go and check on everything tonight, which means the twins will have to dine without her. Bliss starts up her usual protests, but this time even Lai Pei joins in, asking if they can accompany her throughout the checks. With a little support from Tiaran, the crown princess agrees. She even lets them hold her hand. Although, I don't know why they push so hard to see the festival before it's all set up. The square is pretty much empty when they arrive. Poor Bliss can't walk for long periods of time with her condition. Lai Pei notices that she's struggling and suggests they turn back, but she is determined to hold out, at least until their father joins. Besides, she is quickly distracted from the pain when she spots a stand selling skewers nearby. It turns out she doesn't want them for her. Asher once told her that Aria loved skewers when they were both kids, so she wanted to give one to her mom. Aww. Pretty soon after that, Bliss faints again, so they have to make an abrupt retreat to the palace. It kind of seems like her condition is only getting worse the longer she stays in this timeline. At least, that's what Lai Pei suspects. After she leaves, Tiaran confesses that she's seen this kind of illness before. Apparently, near the village from where she was raised, there's a lake that can help to cure diseases. Anyone who drinks from it is said to recover. Oh my god, guys, this is it! Do you see what happened? Bliss went back and got rid of Ruby, so now Tiarin has stayed in her job and told them the secret cure to all their troubles. All the pieces are falling into place. Who knew it would be that easy? After scaring Tiarin with an inch of her life with that good old villainous face of hers, Aria finds Lai Pei out in the hallway and asks her a question. In the future she inhabits, has anything changed as a result of Bliss coming back to the past? Lai Pei says no, except that a position Ruby used to hold is now taken by Tiarin. It might not seem like it to Lai Pei, but that's the most important change of all. The fact that Tiarin still works for the palace in the future is a sign that Aria didn't cut off her head, which means she probably wasn't lying. Now they just have to see if this lake is really as powerful as she claims it is. She sends Lai Pei to bed and visits her husband. He is up late in his study looking over the best midwives and doctors in the country. The poor guy. It's a good thing she found the solution to their worries. She tells him about the lake, and at first, he's very doubtful. But Aria has already sent Tiarin off to her hometown to retrieve some of the lake water so that they can test its powers for themselves. So they'll find out if it works soon enough. 1 week later, Bliss is still in bed, too poorly to attend the festival that everyone has been enjoying. They've tried to bring her gifts and food from every stall to soften the blow, but it's not the same, and no kid wants to be stuck in bed all week. Lucky for her, Tiarin has just returned from her hometown with a portion of magical lake water. Apparently, the villagers consider it sacred, so it was quite difficult to acquire even just a small amount. To demonstrate both her loyalty to the Empress and the proof of her words, she slashes a deep wound in her arm and then drinks a mouthful of the water. And what do you know? It really does work! The wound heals in seconds, leaving no trace of a scar. But Aria doesn't want a flask, she wants the whole lake. Even just convincing the elders to let her bring outsiders in will take time, according to Tiarin. It's supposed to be a secret, otherwise everyone would come to take the water for themselves. The only reason they let her get away with this small portion is because she said it was for the crown princess. After that, they agreed straight away. Aria doesn't question their kindness. She just marches over to her daughters and hands Bliss a big glass of water. She chugs the whole thing. Apparently, it tastes delicious. Then she gets off the bed without any dizziness, and Aria says that they can go to the festival. Is she really cured just like that? She certainly seems to be feeling better. The whole family head to the festival together that afternoon, where Asher explains the truth of the healing lake to Lai Pei. I don't know if she's totally healed or will need a trip to the lake to really cure her, but for now, she seems more full of energy than she has been in weeks. I guess it means Lai Pei and Bliss can finally go home and rest easy knowing that everyone will be alright. Now that the family are reunited and healthy, it seems only fitting that Karen and Chloe would pop in for a visit at the royal palace. The second mother and daughter are alone, Karen lunges for the alcohol. Apparently, the life of a Crowan noble is harder than it looks. Sensing that her mother is about to go overboard, she steps out to get some water to weaken the liquor, and ends up trying a drop of the lake water out of curiosity. Suddenly, she's surrounded by golden light, transported to a bright heavenly place up in the clouds watched over by… Wait, is that God? I cannot believe the big man himself made it into this manhwa. Congratulations, God! Now, to make sense of this religious experience, we have to remember some context. The first ever emperor was said to be literally blessed by God, hence the imperial abilities. According to myth, those powers were supposed to be activated after drinking water from the lake. Anyway, Aria asks if the mysterious godlike figure has any important message to tell her. But he doesn't speak, so she ends up going on a rant, admitting that she's dissatisfied with her two lives, mainly because of all the people around her who have had to suffer, most recently her children. But I mean, look how it all worked out. She can't be too ungrateful. When God finally does speak, it's in a language she can't understand. Then everything goes bright again and the vision ends. I guess we won't know for now whether he took her words into consideration or not. Back in the palace, Bliss wakes up the day after the festival feeling 3 pounds heavier, but content. She doesn't seem to have noticed that she stopped fainting, so Lai Pei tells her that their mother found a cure. And really, it was all because of Bliss, going back in time and changing the past so that they could discover the healing lake. When she hears this, Bliss leaps out of bed and hunts down her mother, who has just returned from heaven by the looks of things. She gives her a huge hug and thanks her for everything. They then hear a mumbling from the other room and discover that Karen has passed out from drinking too much wine. Some things never really change, huh? The next day is the long-awaited coronation. Asher and Aria look wonderful in their outfits, and the whole city is delighted to officially accept their future emperor and empress. The ceremony itself is very grand, with jewels and holy water, crowns. And 2 very cute flower girls, of course. When the time comes for Asher to be crowned, he bows down not before the priest, but before his wife, allowing her to be the one to crown him. Take note, boys. This is how true gentlemen behave. Lai Pei and Bliss are so happy that they get to witness this huge moment in person and are even more delighted because they can celebrate their parents' long lives together. Which means it's time for them to head back to their own family, their own timeline. But when they leave, Asher and Aria will forget all memory of their future children, since if the cure works, they won't have a complicated birth and their powers won't awaken so early on. I know, it's confusing, but just trust me, it makes sense. Aria is sad to be losing her memories, but she knows that she'll see them again when her own children are born a few years later. After the kids have finally returned and the ceremony is over, Aria and Asher celebrate becoming rulers of the Empire with a not-so-secret kiss on the balcony at their coronation party. I say not so secret because Rohan is staring at them from inside. He's still got no boundaries, even after all this time. Rohan is being hounded by his advisors as usual to get a wife, settle down, and provide some heirs for the Empire. There's also a war brewing and several treaties to finalize, but for some reason, everyone in this series is always far more concerned about babies. The old Marquise Piast approaches Rohan to tell him the story of a woman far away who was said to have died and been brought back to life. Apparently, when she returned to her body, she was a completely different person who was super smart and able to solve all the village's problem. Oh, and she's also apparently very attractive. This piques Rohan's interest. Not just because she's attractive, but because it sounds like the use of an imperial ability. Who knows? Maybe she's another long-lost princess. It's certainly worth investigating. The woman's name is Neke, and just like Aria, she sees her second shot as a gift from God, one that she cherishes more than anything. But she's not just some girl who got lucky. This is none other than the reincarnation of Isis. Yeah, that Isis. Remember her? The one who got her head chopped off for trying to bring down an empire? If she's returning to the game, then we've got a whole new villain to contend with. Meanwhile, in the future, Bliss and Lai Pei have arrived in slightly different bodies. I mean, mainly Lai Pei, who is now a blonde copy and paste of Bliss for some reason. But everything else is right as rain. Their mother is healthy, they were born healthy, and everyone is happy as can be. It seems like our story has just about wrapped up. Unless Aria dares to dust off her hourglass for one last adventure. Anyways, guys, that is the end of this series. Thank you all so much for staying with us to the end. It's been one heck of a roller coaster. From executions to ancient powers to time-traveling twins, this manhwa really had it all. I mean, we literally met God at one point. But I loved every moment of it, and I hope you guys did too. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our channel and subscribe, like, and comment for more recap content.